Chapter 2269. In her previous life, when her younger brother was kidnapped, Lang Sha wanted Yun Jian to bring the sandalwood box to exchange hostages with him. Back then, the sandalwood box was very popular. Top international leaders and even some old guys who had been in seclusion for many years came out to fight for it. Some of them even hired top secret agents or mercenaries to fight for the sandalwood box even at the cost of their lives. And the sandalwood box was obtained by Yun Jian from Officer Xing rather than a fight. It was more accurate to say that Officer Xing personally knelt and handed the sandalwood box to Yun Jian. This Officer Xing was an international-level criminal police officer. His international status was very high because Officer Xing had captured countless international felons. He had even participated in the arrest of a very powerful 3S-level wanted criminal back then. Back then, the sandalwood box fell into Officer Xing's hands. However, this sandalwood box had not been in Officer Xing's hands for long. Before Officer Xing could warm the sandalwood box, a terrifying woman appeared. That woman was Yun Jian. Back then, Officer Xing swore that he would never hand over the sandalwood box. Later, Yun Jian killed all 156 of his elites in front of him. In the end, Officer Xing was forced to kneel in front of Yun Jian in public and hand the sandalwood box to Yun Jian. This incident was the shame of Officer Xing's career. At the same time, it was also Officer Xing's nightmare. Officer Xing did not know who that woman was, but after that, whenever he thought of that woman, Officer Xing would wake up from his dreams. Therefore, in Officer Xing's heart, Yun Jian's behavior was not only the shame of his career, but more importantly, it was a nightmare that would make Officer Xing break out in cold sweat every time he thought of it. Originally, Officer Xing thought that the terrifying woman would never stand in front of him again in his life. He never expected, this woman actually changed her face and appeared in front of him again. Officer Xing was so scared that his forehead was covered in cold sweat. He looked at Yun Jian in horror and opened his mouth, but he was so scared that he could not say anything. What is this woman saying? She actually said that our handsome and brave Officer Xing personally knelt in front of her and handed that sandalwood box. Who does she think she is? Southern Sea Guanyin? Slaying God, the #1 on the international secret agent ranking? What a joke. This was really going to make people laugh to death. Officer Xing, let's quickly arrest this thief. An Interpol officer standing next to Officer Xing, who was also Officer Xing's subordinate, suddenly laughed out loud after hearing Yun Jian's words. When he was done laughing, he sneered at Yun Jian with a slightly mocking gaze and spoke with a smirk. Not many people knew that Officer Xing had knelt down and presented the sandalwood box to Yun Jian. At least no one knew about it now, including Officer Xing's subordinates. Hearing Officer Xing's subordinate refuting Yun Jian in such a tone, Jia Wei, Eva, and the others instantly breathed a sigh of relief. Especially Jia Wei, he rolled his eyes at Yun Jian. At first, he thought that Yun Jian would come up with some tricks to let him get away. In the end, even Officer Xing's subordinates didn't know her. Yun Jian was obviously putting on a show. After rolling his eyes at Yun Jian lazily, Jia Wei began to worry about his own situation. Was he really going to be arrested together with Ling Feng? However, just as Officer Xing's subordinate and Jia Wei finished speaking, the surrounding people suddenly saw Officer Xing looking at Yun Jian as if he had seen a ghost. His face turned pale and his lips turned pale. Then, he looked at Yun Jian and said in horror, "Please remember the domain name of this book." Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2270. Officer Xing's lips trembled, and his rosy cheeks turned pale and weak. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. Officer Xing was a very calm and collected Interpol officer. For him to be able to sit in his position today, his strength and ability must be indispensable. And it was such an international police officer that after seeing Yun Jian, Officer Xing's expression changed abruptly. His lips and teeth trembled as if he had seen something extremely terrifying. "Chief Xing, you're..." The subordinate who rejected Yun Jian's request just now stared at Chief Xing blankly after his initial shock. She's right. She's the terrifying woman who forced me to kneel and beg for mercy. Before Jia Wei could react, Officer Xing let out a huge sigh of relief and admitted it in front of everyone. After saying that, Officer Xing took a deep breath and turned to look at Gui Ling. He suddenly said apologetically, "Looks like our cooperation has to end. I can't afford to offend this woman. That necklace, if you have the ability, you can fight for it yourself." After saying that, Officer Xing looked at Yun Jian seriously and waved his hand. He waved to his Interpol officers and turned to leave. He didn't even arrest Ling Feng, Jia Wei, Eva, and the others. It seemed that Officer Xing would rather report the crime of losing the necklace to his superiors than continue the confrontation with Yun Jian. After a while, Officer Xing, who had been eyeing Ling Feng and Yun Jian covetously, led a group of Interpol officers and left faster than anyone else. Jane, Eva, Calvin, Ella, Calvin, and the others were all shocked when they saw this. Seeing this, Yun Jian didn't plan to stay. She hooked the sky blue necklace on her wrist and swung it. She turned around briskly and signaled Calvin and Ella to leave with her. Seeing this, Calvin and Ella weren't stupid. They planned to quickly follow Yun Jian and leave before Ling Feng, Jia Wei, Eva, and the others could react. However, just as Calvin and Ella were planning to follow Yun Jian and leave, a voice came and stopped Yun Jian from leaving. "Stop!" Under everyone's gaze, Gui Ling, who didn't have the help of Officer Xing and the others, narrowed his eyes. He reached out a bony hand and smoothed the mask on his face. He then called out to Yun Jian in a strange voice. Hearing Gui Ling's words, even Calvin and Ella's heart trembled violently. Not to mention Jia Wei, Eva, and the others. Their faces changed as if they had seen something horrifying. At this moment, Gui Ling's voice once again sounded out. Within his words, there was a trace of coldness that caused one's heart to tremble. "Leave the necklace and you can leave. Otherwise," before Gui Ling could finish his sentence, Ling Feng looked at Gui Ling and spoke after Gui Ling finished his sentence. "Gui Ling, how dare you trick me? With me here today, don't even think about taking the necklace away." There were three groups of people who wanted to fight for the necklace. Yun Jian, Calvin, and Ella were in the group. Ling Feng, Jia Wei, and Eva were in the group. After Officer Xing left, Gui Ling was in the group by himself. The three groups were eyeing the necklace covetously. However, just as Gui Ling and Ling Feng were determined to get the necklace, Yun Jian's disdainful voice suddenly came. Her words made Gui Ling, Ling Feng, and the others tremble from the depths of their souls. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2271. Page 1/1, Yun Jian said as she lightly swung the sky blue necklace on her hand. The necklace hung on Yun Jian's index finger as if it would fly out of Yun Jian's hand if she wasn't careful. However, she maintained a leisurely and complacent expression from beginning to end. It was as if she was facing the threat of Ling Feng and Gui Ling, two first-class godly thieves from the fox hunting organization. She did not feel the slightest bit of panic or fear. "Mr. Ling Feng, didn't you say that you're an expert in direct combat and that you're strong? Let's defeat that woman and the other first-level thief and take the necklace." Jia Wei suggested quickly, remembering that Yun Jian had mentioned Ling Feng's prowess back then. The woman was, of course, Yun Jian. To Jia Wei, nothing else mattered. The most important thing was for Ling Feng to take the necklace back from Yun Jian's hands. Hearing Jia Wei's words, Yun Jian's lips curled even tighter. She lightly pursed her lips and sneered. The fox hunting organization's #1 thief, Ling Feng, is indeed an expert in direct combat. However, have you forgotten that there is always someone stronger? Just because Ling Feng is an expert doesn't mean that he's the strongest. Yun Jian smirked coldly, her nonchalant expression making everyone's heart race. At that moment, Jiawei, Eva, Calvin and everyone else were trying to figure out the meaning of Yun Jian's words. Yun Jian stretched out her hands and took out a pair of transparent leather gloves in front of everyone. Then, in front of everyone present, she put the pair of transparent leather gloves on her fair and slender hands. Her movements were slow and leisurely, but there was an indescribable sense of beauty. It was as if Yun Jian, who was slowly fiddling with the gloves, was just a harmless 18-year-old girl. While everyone was captivated by Yun Jian's action of slowly slipping the glove on her fair and slender hand, Yun Jian stared at her slender hand and curled her lips to provoke Ling Feng and Gui Ling in front of everyone. I don't have time to interfere with your grudges. The necklace is in my hands now. You want it? Then let's fight for it. I don't have time to play around with you. If you want the necklace, come at me together. Yun Jian's words, coming from an 18-year-old girl, had an indescribable sense of arrogance. Hearing this, everyone present was stunned. Especially Gui Ling and Ling Feng. When Gui Ling heard Yun Jian's words, because he was wearing a mask, no one could see his expression. At that moment, everyone could tell from Gui Ling's body trembling after hearing Yun Jian's words that Gui Ling was stunned. Stunned for a moment, Gui Ling suddenly chuckled and spoke up after Yun Jian was done, "You're right. Since I've decided to get rid of Ling Feng today, do you think I came here alone?" After saying this, Gui Ling suddenly clapped his hands. At that moment, 7 figures suddenly flashed in the dark. In the blink of an eye, these 7 figures appeared in front of everyone. At that moment, there were both men and women among the 7 figures. Most of them were wearing masks and looked exactly like Gui Ling. Seeing the 7 people, Ling Feng was stunned. "You guys. Don't tell me." After the 7 people appeared, one of the more muscular men laughed coldly at Ling Feng. "Ha! Ling Feng, you didn't expect this, did you? It's not just Gui Ling. There are 9 level 1 godly thieves in the fox hunting organization. Other than you, the other 8 level 1 godly thieves in the fox hunting organization all want you dead." That's right, the 7 people who appeared were the 9 level 1 godly thieves in the hunting fox organization, other than Gui Ling and Ling Feng. The 7 of them, including Gui Ling, all wanted Ling Feng dead. After the man who saw the situation spoke, he glanced at Yun Jian from the corner of his eyes and said, at the same time, "I'll take care of you, little troublemaker. Ha! How dare you be so arrogant in front of us? Don't you want to live in this world?" Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2272. This unforeseen event caught everyone off guard. Gui Ling wanting to deal with Ling Feng was already out of everyone's expectations. Now, it had become the case that the other 8 level 1 godly thieves from the hunting fox organization wanted to kill Ling Feng. In other words, the 7 level 1 godly thieves from the hunting fox organization who suddenly appeared had the same idea of killing Ling Feng. Since they all had the same idea, then no matter how powerful Yun Jian was, it would be good if she could match up to Gui Ling. Now, Gui Ling had helpers. Gui Ling's helpers weren't ordinary people, they were the famous level 1 godly thieves from the hunting fox organization. There were 7 of them in total. Usually, the appearance of a level 1 godly thief from the hunting fox organization was enough to cause a commotion. But now? The only 9 level 1 godly thieves from the hunting fox organization were all present. And the 8 level 1 godly thieves wanted to kill one of them. Yun Jian actually dared to speak to Gui Ling in such a tone. Even if she didn't die, she would die from her own stupidity. Seeing this, Jay, Eva, Calvin, Ella, and the others all sucked in a deep breath and were stunned for a moment. This time, Yun Jian was really done for. Gui Ling wasn't alone. With the arrival of his 7 helpers and Yun Jian saying such outrageous words, she had completely sent herself to a dead end. Hearing the words of the more muscular level 1 godly thief, Ling Feng suddenly shook his head and laughed. After laughing, he seemed to have given up on his own life. He raised his head and met the eyes of the 8 level 1 godly thieves, including Gui Ling, and laughed. I, Ling Feng, have stolen countless rare treasures in my life, but I have never done anything to harm anyone's life. You want to kill me, this is a foregone conclusion. No matter, from the moment I stepped into the world of godly thieves, I didn't plan to leave alive. But they are innocent. Take it as my last plea to you, let them leave. Take the necklace. Ling Feng pointed at Yunjian, Jiawei, Calvin and the others as he spoke to the 8 level 1 godly thieves, including Gui Ling. After hearing Ling Feng's words, Gui Ling laughed loudly. Gui Ling already knew that Ling Feng's death was a foregone conclusion. He laughed loudly and refuted Ling Feng's words. Why are you still pretending to be a good person when you're about to die? This little girl dared to talk to me like that, I'm going to humiliate her to death. Only then can I resolve the hatred in my heart. After these words were spoken, the hearts of the surrounding people trembled violently. Jiawei and the others were so scared that they didn't dare to utter a single word. It had evolved into this situation. This was a confrontation between a group of international bigwigs. None of them dared to utter a single word. Did they not want to live anymore? When Gui Ling saw this scene, he once again let out a strange laughter that sounded like silver bells. After laughing, he looked at Yun Jian and said to Ling Feng, since you care so much about her, I'll shoot her in front of you. As he spoke, Gui Ling reached out to take out a pistol from his waist. But just as he reached for the box at his waist, he felt nothing. Gun? Where was his gun? Just as Gui Ling was thinking about this, a girl's voice suddenly sounded. Is this what you're looking for? After speaking, Yun Jian suddenly stretched out her hand from behind her back. But what was different from before was that Yun Jian's outstretched hand was holding a large number of weapons. All kinds of guns and knives. When Gui Ling, the 7 level 1 godly thieves, and the other level 7 godly thieves saw these guns and knives, they all turned pale with fright. Aren't those our weapons? Why are they with you? Those weapons, how did they all end up in this little girl's hands? Gui Ling was so scared that his expression suddenly changed. Who exactly was she? Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2273. The Fox Hunting Organization was founded not too long ago. When the Fox Hunting Organization was founded as a thieving organization, the head of the Fox Hunting Organization had invited various international bigwigs to a banquet. Yun Jian, also known as Slaying God, was not the top secret agent on the international secret agent chart at that time. The head of the Fox Hunting Organization, Long Shi, had founded a thieving organization because of Yun Jian's reminder. When Slaying God first started her career, she did not accept assassination missions, but various cultural relics instead. When Yun Jian became Slaying God, she did not make a name for herself by going through the usual assassination missions. When she first started her career, she only accepted thieving missions and would occasionally accept assassination missions. Slaying God completed her thieving missions smoothly no matter how many people tried to stop her. She had never failed a thieving mission since she took on thieving missions. Regular thieving masters would more or less make mistakes, but Slaying God, who had just left the Hun organization, not only became the most powerful thief in the history of thieving masters in the shortest amount of time. Later on, no matter how many people tried to stop her, she could complete her missions smoothly. That was not all. During the period when Slaying God took on thieving missions, she would send a theft notice to the owner of the treasures she had her eyes on before she stole them. In other words, when she stole a treasure, she had to tell the owner of the treasure that she was here to steal it. If he had the ability, he should be prepared. Even so, whenever Slaying God took on a thieving mission, even if the owner knew in advance that she was going to steal the treasure and hired numerous international bigwigs to guard it, there was nothing they could do. What was more terrifying was that not only did Slaying God manage to steal the treasure even when the owner of the treasure knew that she was going to steal it and hired numerous international bigwigs to guard it. Furthermore, they did not even know when slaying God's men had stolen the treasure. That level of arrogance had caused an international uproar in the shortest amount of time. There were even people who said that slaying God was not human but a ghost. Only a ghost could do such a thing. That was what the international community was saying. Slaying God was known as the Grandmaster of Thieving Masters back then because she was invincible. After that, slaying God switched to assassination missions. Her influence on the international scene was so great that it led to the Blood Night incident. After the Bloody Night incident, slaying God shot to fame and became a global sensation. At that time, the head of the fox hunting organization, Long Shi, listened to Yun Jian and established the fox hunting organization. As for Yun Jian, she was naturally invited by the head of the fox hunting organization, Long Shi, as the Grandmaster of the Great Thief World with the highest VIP seat. At that time, this incident caused a sensation all over the world. Everyone present knew about it. Gue Ling and Ling Feng, who were standing in front of Yun Jian, as well as the 7 godly thieves from the fox hunting organization, had all heard about this matter. Therefore, when they heard Yun Jian's words, everyone revealed shocked expressions. The progenitor of the thief god world. You're the progenitor of the thief god world? Isn't the ancestor of the thief god world? When the fox hunting organization was founded, the founder of the master thief world, Long Shi, had been hired as a VIP by the fox hunting organization's boss, was none other than Slaying God, the top secret agent on the international secret agent ranking. Gue Ling stared at Yun Jian with his eyes wide open in fear as he spoke in a daze. The progenitor of the thief god world was none other than Slaying God, the top secret agent on the international secret agent ranking back then. This was something that everyone in the circle was familiar with. At that time, after Gue Ling listened to Yun Jian's words, coupled with the fact that Yun Jian was able to steal the hidden weapons from him and the 7 international level 1 godly thieves from the fox hunting organization without anyone noticing, Gue Ling's body trembled violently. He was so stunned that he could not utter a word for a long time. When Gue Ling mentioned the 2 words, Slaying God, his voice was so soft that Eva, Jia Wei, Calvin, Ella, and the rest could not hear him at all. Therefore, when Jia Wei and the rest heard Gue Ling's words, their eyes froze and they were momentarily stunned. At that moment, it was not just Gue Ling. Even Ling Feng and the other 7 level 1 godly thieves from the fox hunting organization had a change of expression. However, Jia Wei could not see the expressions of the masked Gue Ling and the other 7 level 1 godly thieves from the fox hunting organization. He was already unhappy with Yun Jian, so he refuted her verbally. Ha! She can't possibly be the ancestor of the godly thieves world. The ancestor of the godly thieves world was someone from so many years ago. How old was she back then? She even claimed to be the ancestor of the godly thieves world. Pfft! She must be joking. Is she showing off her acting skills now? Jia Wei looked at Yun Jian with contempt and said mercilessly. Just as Jia Wei finished his sentence, he suddenly saw Gue Ling, Ling Feng, and the other 7 level 1 godly thieves looking at a corner. When they saw a mature male figure walking over from that corner, all of them lowered their heads and said in unison to the mature male who had just appeared. Boss, boss. It was the leader of the fox hunting organization, Long Shi. He had appeared. When Long Shi, the leader of the fox hunting organization, appeared in front of everyone's eyes, he first scanned the surroundings with his majestic aura. When he saw Yun Jian, his pupils trembled violently. Right in front of Jia Wei, Eva, and everyone else, Long Shi strode to Yun Jian and spoke to her in an extremely respectful tone, "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. You're here too. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website." Chapter 2274. Page 1/1, Long Shi was already 35 years old. To be able to become the leader of the fox hunters at this age, he was already considered young and promising. Long Shi was considered a mature man. Although he was already 35 years old, his appearance was not bad and his skin was well maintained. Just from his appearance alone, he gave off a different kind of handsome vibe. The fact that Long Shi had walked up to Yun Jian in front of everyone and said that in public was enough to make one thing clear. Yun Jian, was the ancestor of the thieves. This unforeseen event not only frightened Jia Wei and the others, even Gui Ling, Ling Feng, and the others who had already guessed this point had their faces turn pale with fright. It was not surprising that Long Shi could recognize Yun Jian. Before her rebirth, Yun Jian's appearance was always changing in front of outsiders. She always wore a human skin mask on her face. Yun Jian's current body was the same as her body when she was slaying God in her previous life. When she was reborn into this body, she was only a little more than 1.6 meters tall. Yun Jian was the same as in her previous life, 1.65 meters tall. Her body was also the same as in her previous life. She was so perfect that no one could find fault with her. Moreover, Long Shi was very familiar with Yun Jian. Just by looking at Yun Jian's intimidating aura, he had already recognized Yun Jian. Seeing this scene, Gui Ling, Ling Feng, and the other 7 level 1 godly thieves of the fox hunting organization suddenly changed their expressions. Jia Wei, who had said that Yun Jian was addicted to showbiz, sucked in a sharp breath from the shock. His rosy cheeks that had just warmed up were now ashen and pale as a sheet. Eva, who was also unhappy with Yun Jian like Jia Wei, also took a deep breath. Put away your respectful attitude. I haven't seen you for a few years and I didn't expect you to be so good at acting. Where's that cocky attitude you used to have in front of me? Yun Jian glanced at Long Shi. She crossed her arms in front of her chest, waiting to see how Long Shi was going to act. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but be slightly shocked. From what Yun Jian said, she seemed to be very close to the boss of the fox hunting organization, Long Shi. Don't you seem to enjoy the feeling of being respected and worshipped by others? Tell me, which brats in my organization offended you just now? I'll catch them and cook them for dinner later. After Yun Jian said this, Long Shi, who had been looking at Yun Jian with respect and had even lowered his head to speak to Yun Jian with a trembling tone, suddenly seemed to have changed into a different person. He walked up to Yun Jian and spoke in the tone of an old friend. As he spoke, Long Shi glanced left and right at Gui Ling, Ling Feng, and the other 7 level 1 godly thieves. He looked as if he had seen his prey. It was as if Yun Jian said who had offended her, Long Shi would really capture them and cook them. The appearance of the fox hunting organization's boss was something that no one had expected. At that time, Gui Ling, Ling Feng, and the other 7 level 1 godly thieves were like deflated balloons. They all lowered their heads and didn't dare to say a word. It was only then that Long Shi came to Yun Jian's side and spoke to her with a grin. Aya, my little s, look at you. It's only been a few years since we last met and you've become even more beautiful. Look at your breasts, your butt. TSK, speaking of which, little s, 4 years ago I said that I would marry you when you grow up. Are you not going to consider it? Sigh, I'm afraid that no one in this world would want such a cruel woman like you. So, do you want to consider obediently coming into my warm embrace? Although I'm a little older, I know how to dote on women. I didn't marry for so many years because I wanted to wait for you to grow up. Come, little s, give me a hug. Little s was the unique name that Long Shi used to address Yun Jian. 4 years ago, Long Shi had told Yun Jian that he would marry her when she grew up. At that time, Yun Jian hadn't been reborn yet. She had never thought about love, so she didn't reject Long Shi nor did she agree to him. What Yun Jian did not know, however, was that Long Shi's eyes shone with sincerity when he said those words that sounded like a joke. At that time, after Long Shi said that last sentence, he really reached out to hug Yun Jian. Even though Yun Jian didn't give him a chance to hug her and avoided him every time, Long Shi didn't give up. He was waiting for her to accept him. However, before long she could reach out to hug Yun Jian, a slender and handsome figure suddenly appeared in front of everyone. In the next second, a slender hand grabbed Long Shi's hand that was about to hug Yun Jian while a long leg kicked Long Shi 10 meters away mercilessly. At the same time, a magnetic and enraged voice boomed out of the blue, "What are you talking about? That's my woman. Stay away from my woman." Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2275. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation. Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. After Long Shi was yanked away, he was kicked in the abdomen. As he was in front of Yun Jian, Long Shi was defenseless and the kick sent him flying 10 meters away. Fortunately, Long Shi was strong. Although he was kicked to the ground by the sudden kick, he quickly stood up and glanced sideways at the handsome man who suddenly appeared in front of him. The man was in his early 20s, wearing a black casual shirt and a pair of black casual pants. This black casual shirt and black casual pants gave off an indescribable sense of handsomeness when worn by the handsome man. The simple and light clothes outlined the handsome man's slender figure. Looking from afar, the handsome man gave people the feeling that he was a king who was unattainable. That aura that belonged to a king made Long Shi tremble from the depths of his soul. The most shocking thing for Long Shi was not that the handsome man was younger, taller, more handsome, and more compatible with Yun Jian. It was, the handsome man was wearing a black casual shirt and black casual pants, and Yun Jian was wearing a black tight shirt and black tight pants. Upon closer inspection, the patterns on the shirt and pants, they were exactly the same. Did this mean that the two of them were wearing matching outfits? Long Shi was so angry that he almost vomited blood when he saw this. When Yun Jian, as slaying god, had just debuted, most of the missions she took were for thieves. From then on, Yun Jian knew Long Shi, who was an international thief. What attracted Long Shi's attention at first was Yun Jian's unique skills. When Yun Jian debuted as a newbie, she had looked for Long Shi to work with her a few times. Long Shi had always treated Yun Jian as a younger sister. Because of Yun Jian's unique skills, he had worked with Yun Jian many times. Later on, Long Shi gradually realized that Yun Jian's skills were so strong that it was impossible not to admire her. At the age of 14, she had directly killed the previous boss of Kosha mercenaries. At such a young age, she had become the top secret agent in the international secret agent chart. Her achievements were much higher than his. It was only then that Long Shi realized that he had fallen in love with this girl who was almost 20 years younger than him. That was why Long Shi told Yun Jian that he would wait for her to grow up so that she could consider marrying him as his wife. For the past 4 years, Long Shi had been waiting for Yun Jian. Not only was he waiting for her to grow up, but he was also waiting for her to consider his proposal. Yun Jian at that time did not reject him nor did she agree to his proposal. Long Shi was still hopeful that she would agree to his proposal the next time he saw her. Long Shi had waited for Yun Jian for the past 4 years. He did not have any contact with any woman. Even the Hunting Fox organization Hunting Fox without a second thought. Of Yun Jian translation is translation, Fox Hunting Fox. As Long Shi as Long Shi translation as, Yun and as Long Shi since Long Shi translation. Unexpectedly, the Hunting Fox organization Hunting Fox was successful. At that time, CE suddenly appeared beside Yun Jian and held onto the hand that Long Shi had never been able to hold. Long Shi clenched his fist. "Your woman. Little S has a man. Why didn't I know about it?" He had waited bitterly for 4 years. The moment he saw CE, Long Shi's heart turned cold. He said hatefully, "I don't believe it." Long Shi shouted again before CE could respond. After that, Long Shi's eyes narrowed as he looked at CE's unbelievably handsome face and spoke to Yun Jian, "What's the matter? Little S, don't tell me you deliberately found a man to put on an act just to reject me?" CE frowned when Long Shi said that. In the next second, Ce grabbed the back of Yun Jian's head and bent his handsome face down in front of Long Shi. He grabbed Yun Jian's mouth and their tongues intertwined. It was a moment later that Ce looked up with narrowed eyes, glaring at Long Shi with his gaze as sharp as an eagle's. He then spoke to the latter in a provocative tone, "What are you talking about? Apart from having children, we've done everything else as husband and wife. How can it be fake?" Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Calvin and Ella agreed on a time and place to meet Yun Jian and left first. Long Shi, on the other hand, stood in place and dealt with the matter of the 9 level 1 godly thieves killing each other. After Ce pulled Yun Jian into his Lamborghini sports car, he directly pulled Yun Jian, who was sitting in the passenger seat, into the driver's seat. Then, Ce flattened the car seat and grabbed her seductive lips, kissing her deeply. Yun Jian hadn't been intimate with Ce for a long time. After being kissed by Ce, she wrapped her arms around Ce's neck and let him do whatever he wanted. Immediately after the passionate kiss, Ce raised his hand and pulled off her black tights and panties. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2277. Yun Jian blushed when she felt what Ce was doing, clamping her thighs together before her panties were pulled off. This was the entrance of the Paris Museum. If they were seen. Yun Jian flushed. The windows are tinted, people outside can't see us. Be good, Xiao Jian, just this once. Before Yun Jian could react, Ce bit her earlobe. The earlobe was Yun Jian's most sensitive part. Moreover, Yun Jian missed Ce dearly, therefore, after a few rounds, she was pushed down, and he was satisfied with it. Inside the Paris Museum, where Yun Jian and the others were just now, Long Shi had yet to leave. When he saw Yun Jian being pulled away by Ce, he panicked and wanted to chase after them, but the internal conflict in the organization had not been settled yet. Panicking and having been angered by Ce just now, Long Shi turned to his subordinates, Ling Feng, Gui Ling, and the 9 level 1 thieves present, and bellowed. "What were you doing just now?" Fox Hunting was a thief organization. It was not like an assassin or secret agent organization where you could kill the other party anytime you wanted. The thieves in Fox Hunting had all signed a contract with Long Shi. If one of them died, Long Shi would be the one to suffer a huge loss. Even if one of the lowest level 6 thieves in Fox Hunting died, Long Shi would suffer a huge loss, let alone a level 1 thief. What was more, a level 1 thief of the highest level. Therefore, Fox Hunting had its own rules. One of the most important rules was that the thieves in Fox Hunting were not allowed to kill each other or fight openly or covertly. What had he discovered today though? 8 level 1 thieves in Fox Hunting had teamed up to go against one of the level 1 thieves and even wanted to kill Ling Feng. Fox Hunting's level 1 thieves were afraid of their leader, Long Shi, so all of them lowered their heads and kept quiet. At that time, only Long Shi and the 9 godly thieves from the Fox Hunting organization were present. Jay, Eva, Calvin, and Ella had all left. Just as Long Shi was flustered and exasperated, Gui Ling suddenly took the lead and asked Long Shi, "Boss, we admit our mistake. We won't do it again in the future. But I want to ask, is that woman really the #1 secret agent in the world?" Gui Ling, Ling Feng, and everyone else had already guessed this, but they still couldn't believe it. That young girl who looked like she was only 18 years old. Was she really slaying God, the #1 secret agent in the world? Other than her, who else could have such an aura? I've known slaying God since her debut. How could I have mistaken her for someone else? Long Shi interrupted Gui Ling before he could finish his sentence. These words caused Gui Ling and the others to take in a deep breath. He gladly accepted this fact. After finally settling the internal conflict in the organization and sending Gui Ling and the rest to reflect on their mistakes, Long Shi walked out of the Paris Museum after ensuring that they wouldn't do anything to Ling Feng in the future. Just as he walked out of the Paris Museum, he saw the window of a Lamborghini sports car rolling down not far away. Through the car window, Longxi happened to see Yunjian buttoning the last button of her blouse after packing her clothes. She pushed Ce with a flushed face. Ce's flawlessly handsome face looked straight at Yunjian with an extremely handsome smile. His starry eyes were fixed on Yunjian. His hand slipped under Yunjian's blouse and grabbed a soft spot at close range. At that moment, Yunjian had already put on her clothes. Longxi could only see a pig-trotter hand under Yunjian's blouse. He didn't need to look to know what the two of them were doing in the car. However, that was not all. Before long she could vomit blood from anger, he suddenly saw Ce's handsome lips curling into a sinister smile. In the next second, he lowered his head to kiss Yunjian's shoulder and neck in front of Longxi, planting red strawberries one after another. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2278. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Longxi was close to spitting blood when he saw the scene. What did you guys do here just now? When Longxi saw this, he rushed forward almost instantly. His tightly clenched fists were trembling from anger. All the cells in his body were boiling violently. Ce had already tidied up Yunjian's clothes. His woman could only be his. He would not allow outsiders to look at her. Ce reached out to tuck Yunjian's hair and planted strawberries on Yunjian's shoulders and neck in front of Longxi. He even stole a kiss on Yunjian's lips before coldly replying to Longxi. I did what I love to do. The sly words did not sound out of place coming from Ce, who was expressionless. It was enough to infuriate Longxi. Longxi was already twitching in rage, his pupils constricted. That was not all. Ce paused before reaching out to tuck Yunjian's hair in front of Longxi. His starry eyes were fixed on Yunjian as he continued. The kind that doesn't wear panties. After that, Ce touched Yunjian's abdomen and uttered words that were enough to make Longxi spit blood that could shoot him into the sky. Just now, Xiaojian's stomach might already be carrying my child. Longxi's face was as dark as charcoal when he heard that. Longxi clenched his fists so tightly that they overlapped and trembled violently. It was so strong that it felt like he was going to punch Ce in the next second. In spite of it, Longxi held himself back. Longxi was a very far-sighted person. Even if he liked a girl and the girl he liked was in the arms of another man, Longxi would not easily make a move. When necessary, he would even resist telling the other party that he liked the other party. Ce and Longxi were the exact opposite. Like was like. If anyone dared to touch his woman, he would turn them into trash. Yunjian did not say anything after hearing Ce's words. Instead, she snuggled into Ce's arms. Other than blushing a little when she heard Ce's words, Yunjian did not think anything was wrong. What was more, after Ce's words, warmth flowed through Yunjian's heart. Miss S, even if that's the case, I won't let you. I don't care if you're with a man or not. As long as you're willing, my arms, I don't believe that this man loves you more than I do. I will prove it with my actions. Words. Longxi could no longer bear to see Ce and Yunjian in each other's arms. He turned to leave after telling Yunjian this solemnly. Longxi had never told Yunjian that he loved her. Even when he told Yunjian that he would marry her when she grew up, it was only a joke. Yunjian did not expect Longxi to be so persistent. Back then, Yunjian merely blinked when she saw it. Yunjian had always been an idiot when it came to relationships. Therefore, she did not feel much when she heard Longxi's words. Her heart was small and only belonged to Ce now. In the middle of the night, Ce brought Yunjian to a snack bar that was open all night for a meal. Slaying God would always find a snack bar to have a meal after a mission to relieve her stress. After receiving the sky blue necklace today, Ce had a thorough understanding of Yunjian's fetishes. Ce did not only love her as a person or her body. He loved every bit of her, including her likes and dislikes, from everything she liked to eat to the little fetishes. It was a crayfish restaurant. Yunjian loved eating crayfish, especially after a mission. In spite of it, Yunjian rarely ate lobsters at the crayfish restaurant after completing her mission because lobsters were difficult to peel. Ce brought Yunjian to the crayfish restaurant tonight and ordered 3 big pots of crayfish. He did not eat a single bite and peeled the crayfish for Yunjian. Ce used to hate peeling such greasy things. Especially crayfish, which were not only greasy but also prickly. Today, he peeled 3 big pots of crayfish for her. Yunjian did not stop Ce from peeling the crayfish for her. She held her chopsticks and tilted her head slightly to look at his handsome and well-defined face. She felt warm inside. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2279. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. If one were to ask what was the happiest thing that had happened to Yunjian, it would probably be meeting Ce. She had never thought that she would meet her other half in her lifetime. And the person she met just happened to be the person that all the girls had fantasized about in their hearts. Ce brought Yunjian to a nearby hotel and brought Yunjian back to Country S the next day. Xiao Jian, something happened in Deity Continent. I have to go back. If I can't make it back in time, go to Death Island first. I have a way to catch up to you. After sending Yunjian safely to Country S, Ce told Yunjian. News had suddenly come from Deity Continent that something major had happened. As the ruler of Deity Continent, Ce had to make a trip back. Of course, Death Island was the way to the mysterious man's residence. Ce would never let Yunjian take the risk alone. Since he had asked Yunjian to go to Death Island first, he must have a way to catch up to her. Okay. Yunjian nodded. After 2 seconds of contemplation, Yunjian asked again, is there anything major on your side? Deity Continent had an emergency that required Ce's return. Yunjian did not know what it was, but she asked Ce anyway. She asked because she was worried that something life-threatening would happen to him when he returned to Deity Continent. If a person cared about another person, whether it was friendship, family, or love, as long as something happened to the other person, they would be worried half to death. Yunjian asked after hearing Ce say that something had happened in Deity Continent because she was instinctively concerned about Ce's safety. She did not want anything to happen to him. Hearing Yunjian's words, Ce smiled and reached out his large hand to press Yunjian's head, caressing it gently. His eyes, which were usually as sharp as a sword and could kill people, instantly became gentle when he looked at her. Xiao Jian, don't worry. I'm fine. Ce then patted Yunjian's head. Ce then bent down to steal a kiss from Yunjian's soft lips, a satisfied smile spreading across his handsome face. Don't let the fox hunting organization's leader get close to you. I'll be jealous. Ce was straightforward. With that, Ce bent down again and kissed the lips that he had been yearning for day and night at the spot where passers-by would pass by occasionally. Okay, Yunjian, who was kissed so many times by Ce, nodded at Ce in agreement, her cheeks blushing slightly. Although he would often do some embarrassing things to her now, such as leaning down and kissing her casually, she was not afraid to say it out loud. She just liked it and enjoyed it very much. After Ce left, Yunjian came to a snack bar near a pier by the sea in Country S. This was the place where she had agreed to meet Calvin and the others. Just as Yunjian arrived, she saw Calvin and the others waving at her from afar. She put her hands in her trouser pockets and walked toward Calvin and the others. We've got the yacht. It belongs to my friend. He said he's lending it to us for 2 days. The yacht is modified from an old warship. Not only is it fast, even tanks and bombs won't be able to destroy it. We're going to the pier now, we can depart right away. Calvin spoke to Yunjian in fluent English. Yunjian nodded. Just as the group of people was about to walk towards the dock, an aged male voice stopped everyone's footsteps. Wait. I'm going too. Hearing the familiar voice, Yunjian turned with squinted eyes and saw Mr. Horace, who had been staying in the mental hospital for more than 20 years, the only person who had survived Death Island and had been pretending to be insane for more than 20 years, walking toward them with a crutch. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2280. Page 1/1, Horace's appearance was out of everyone's expectations. To Horace, Death Island had become his worst nightmare. His pirate friends had all died on Death Island, and it was a man-made death at that. Therefore, on Death Island, there must be something or someone that could make Horace shudder at the mere sight of it. But Horace actually appeared here, and even proposed to travel with Yunjian's group. This was something that Yunjian and the others did not expect. Although Yunjian was surprised, she did not show her inner feelings on her face. At this moment, Ella saw Horace walking towards them with a walking stick. She was stunned for a moment, but after recovering from her shock, Ella quickly went over to support Horace, who was not tall, only 1.6 meters tall, and had a very skinny body. "Grandpa Horace, why are you here?" Ella asked after supporting Horace. "Yes, Yunjian has already promised to avenge you. Do you still want to go?" Calvin asked after hearing Horace's words. From Yunjian's performance in the Paris Museum, the fox hunting organization's leader seemed to be very familiar with her. Also, she was actually the founder of the Thief World. Although Calvin, Ella and the others did not know Yunjian's exact identity, they could already guess that Yunjian's identity was definitely not ordinary. "Yes, I want to go personally. Actually, when I left Death Island, it was not only because I was afraid that someone would set foot on Death Island again, it was also because I was afraid. For the past 20 years, I have been living in the condemnation of my conscience. Because of my fear, I was afraid that I would set foot on Death Island again. Therefore, I would rather play the fool. I was afraid. I was terrified. I did not dare to go to Death Island, let alone avenge my dead brothers. But today, I have thought it through. I want to go to Death Island myself, I want to avenge them. I can't endure this kind of life anymore. I'd rather throw away my remaining life on Death Island than continue living in this world." Horace had made up his mind. When the others heard this, they could see Horace's inner struggle. Yes, when Horace was young, he had escaped from Death Island after experiencing the hellish terror of Death Island. The reason he played the fool was not only to prevent international people from going to Death Island again. The main reason was that he was afraid that others would force him to lead them to Death Island. Even though his brothers had died on Death Island, he still did not dare to go there again. He did not even have the courage to avenge his brothers. For the past 20 years, Horace had been living with the guilt of not being able to avenge his brothers. He was the only one who had managed to leave Death Island alive, but he had left the corpses of his brothers behind in that terrifying place. It had been 20 years. Horace had finally thought it through. He wanted revenge. To avenge his dead brothers. "Even if I die in that place, I don't want to suffer the pain and despair of my conscience. Everyone was of Death Island was Death Island." After all, Horace had been to the Death Island before and was unfamiliar with the place. The group says, "It's over there." Calvin led the group to his yacht. When they arrived at his yacht, Yunjian saw Jay, Eva, and the others who had snuck away from the Paris Museum. There were no less than 500 people gathered at the dock, each of them carrying all kinds of weapons, blocking Calvin's yacht. "They're here. They're here. They have the necklace that is crucial for going to Death Island. Stop them, don't let them leave. When Jia Wei saw Yun Jian, he was slightly afraid, but he still stood on the high ground and pointed at Yun Jian to the almost 500 people behind him as he spoke loudly. After saying this, Jia Wei shrank back in fear and retreated to the back of the 500 people. These 500 people were obviously seeking thrills, international people who had been looking for Death Island for many years. Some of them were even willing to hurt others to achieve their goals. Jay was afraid of Yun Jian, so he gathered these people to block Yun Jian's. He planned to force Yun Jian to bring all of them along. Otherwise, no one would be able to go to Death Island. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2281. After saying that, Jia Wei slipped behind the 500 people. At this time, the leader of the 500 people was a rough-looking man with a long black beard that covered almost half of his face. He was tall and muscular as if he had been training his muscles for years. After hearing Jia Wei's words, he looked at Yun Jian with a ferocious expression. Are you planning to go to Death Island by yourselves? Listen, little girl, bring us along. Otherwise, don't even think about passing through here today. The muscular man glared at Yun Jian with a ferocious expression. He stood in front of Yun Jian, his big and fierce muscles could be seen clearly even through his shirt. If an ordinary girl heard the muscular man's words, they would probably be scared to tears. However, Yun Jian only frowned slightly. Countless adventurers who loved adventure and sought excitement flocked to this place after hearing the rumors about Death Island. The reason was because they suddenly received a message from Jia Wei saying that they needed to obtain a sky blue necklace to go to Death Island. And that necklace just happened to be in Yun Jian's hands. One must know that when they first heard about Death Island, countless adventurers risked their lives to go to Death Island, but to no avail. Humans were despicable. The more they couldn't get something, the more they wanted to get it. The more mysterious Death Island was, the more people wanted to go there. But no matter how many methods they used, they couldn't go to Death Island. There was once someone who wanted to test whether Horace, the only person who went to Death Island, was pretending to be crazy. They even put a real snake on Horace's bed to scare him. The things that this group of crazy adventurers did were things that outsiders would never expect. They even used unscrupulous methods to achieve their goals. Today, Jia Wei called over these 500 crazy adventurers to force Yun Jian to hand over the necklace. If she didn't hand it over, then no one would be able to go to Death Island. One must know that there was strength in numbers. Unless Yun Jian really had the ability to suppress everyone with her own strength. However, the group of adventurers in front of her, a group of 500 people, were all trained. If they didn't have the ability to go on an adventure, how could they succeed? He, Jia Wei, really couldn't do it. She, Yun Jian, was only an 18-year-old girl. Did she really have the ability to suppress 500 people with her own strength? Thus, after Jia Wei raised the matter, he was afraid that he would be implicated and hid behind these 500 people. At that time, the muscular man's words made everyone's heart beat fiercely and their hearts slightly trembled. Yun Jian didn't say anything, her sharp eyes, a trace of killing intent. The muscular man did not catch the murderous glint that flashed in Yun Jian's eyes. Thinking that she was just an 18-year-old girl, he did not pay much attention to her. Instead, he turned to look at Horace and said angrily, "Horace, Horace of Horned Horace." The muscular man was the one who had put a real, non-poisonous snake on Horace's bed to scare him in order to find out whether Horace was pretending to be crazy or not. Horace was most afraid of snakes. He was really scared, but he forced himself to endure it. "Ha, Horace of Horned Horace. Just you wait. When I get to Death Island, I'll kill you first." The muscular man wasn't joking when he said this to Horace. After saying this, the muscular man turned to glare fiercely at Yun Jian and threatened, "Damn girl, hand over that necklace. Otherwise, I'll let the few hundred men here gang rape you to death." The muscular man was someone who would really do such a thing. When the surrounding people heard the muscular man's words, they all let out wretched laughter. Yun Jian was beautiful. As long as a man saw her, he wouldn't be able to hold himself back. As the muscular man said this, he even stretched out his hand to Yun Jian, asking for the necklace. Jia Wei, Eva, and the rest who were hiding in the dark saw this and smiled fiercely. Let's see what Yun Jian can do now. How could she suppress everyone by herself? Even an international figure wouldn't be able to do this. However, just as Jia Wei and the rest were thinking this and smiling, Yun Jian, who had been lowering her head, suddenly raised her head. In front of everyone, a butterfly knife suddenly appeared in her hand. That knife was thrown out by her from over 10 meters away and directly pierced the muscular man's heart in front of everyone. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2282. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. At that moment, everyone seemed to have seen the Grim Reaper from the Sea of Hellfire. Stepping on the muscular man's corpse with one foot, Yun Jian held the butterfly knife that was still dripping with blood. The crimson blood dripped from the tip of the blade and seeped into the cement floor. From the moment Yun Jian pulled the butterfly knife out of the muscular man's heart, the muscular man died on the spot. Yun Jian's expression did not change in the slightest. Her nonchalant demeanor made it seem like the person she had just killed was not a living person but a lowly ant that was trampled under her foot. She actually dared to kill someone. Hiding behind a group of people, Jia Wei's pupils constricted as he watched Yun Jian, who killed the muscular man with a single slash in front of the 500 adventurers and their family members in shock and fear. Jay, Eva, and the rest who saw this scene were so frightened that their faces turned purple, especially Jay. These 500 adventurers were all called over by Jay after he leaked the news. Hence, Jay was so frightened that his face turned green. He stared at the scene in front of him in horror and wanted to hide behind the crowd to cover his tracks. At this moment, not only Jay, but the 500 adventurers also took a few steps back out of fear when they saw Yun Jian's actions. It was because Yun Jian's actions were too frightening. That aura was so strong that no one was not afraid of it. Even Calvin, Ella, and Horace who were with Yun Jian were frightened. Yun Jian's eyes narrowed when she saw the shock on the faces of the people around her. As if she had not done anything horrifying, she took out a piece of white paper from her pocket and wiped the blood off the butterfly knife before stabbing it back into the wound on her thigh. After finishing this series of actions, Yun Jian turned around and looked at Calvin and the rest. That look meant that Calvin and the rest were to board the yacht first. Calvin was 32 years old this year. Although he was not considered experienced, he was still someone who had experienced many things. Naturally, he could understand the meaning behind Yun Jian's look. Seeing this, Calvin hurriedly gestured to his team members, including Mr. Horace. The few of them quickly walked through the corridor that was blocked by the 500 people and continued to walk to the yacht. They then started the engine and prepared to set sail. Yun Jian was the last to board the yacht. After she killed the muscular man, she sent a message to the Kosha mercenaries in front of everyone and wrote down an address. The Kosha mercenaries had people who specialized in cleaning corpses. After Yun Jian sent the address to the Kosha mercenaries, they immediately sent someone to clean up the place. At the same time, Yun Jian stepped on the flat ground and easily leaped onto the yacht. Because of Yun Jian's presence, the group of adventurers were unwilling to let Yun Jian and the rest leave. Although they were martial artists, they were not international figures who relied on their strength to make a living. Therefore, until the yacht left, the group of adventurers did not make any moves. The group of people who drove the yacht out of the sea heaved a sigh of relief. Calvin was driving the yacht. Thinking about the scene that happened just now, he could not help but sweat. Only when the yacht was a few hundred meters away from the shore did the group finally relax. Yunjian, thank you so much just now. Calvin let out a long sigh. Hearing this, Yunjian only nodded. Only when the yacht was a few thousand meters away from the shore did the group turn on the radio installed in the yacht in order to relieve their tension. At this moment, as soon as the radio was turned on, a beautiful female voice rang out. This beautiful female voice said the news of the day that made everyone's heart tremble. Today, there have been cases of missing persons in country S. The police are still investigating. If there is any specific information, we will broadcast the latest news as soon as possible. Top reading website, M. Chapter 2283. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1, S country? Wasn't the coast they were sailing on, within S country's borders? As they boarded the yacht to Death Island, they turned on the radio and heard the shocking news broadcast. Everyone was shocked. What? What kind of news broadcast is this? How could they report such a strange incident? Do they know that we are going to explore Death Island? One of Calvin and Ella's companions shuddered when he heard the news. He walked over and turned off the radio before sitting down. The man who spoke was 21 years old, 11 years younger than Calvin. His name was Fei Lei. Fei Lei was young and wasn't as steady as Calvin. He wasn't like Horace, who had lived for almost his entire life. Under such an atmosphere and hearing such a news broadcast, young people love to overthink. Therefore, at this moment, Fei Lei shuddered deeply. Fei Lei was considered handsome in the eyes of foreigners. He had thick eyebrows, big eyes, and a high nose bridge. He had the face of a typical young foreign male. However, under such an atmosphere, Fei Lei's words seemed to lack masculinity. Horace, on the other hand, was stunned when he heard the news. However, he quickly regained his composure and tried his best to suppress the fear in his heart before anyone else noticed his horror. It was as if he was recalling something that made his hair stand on end. No one noticed Horace's action. Yunjian, who was sitting on the deck of the yacht, had one leg on the ground and the other leg raised. She was sitting lazily on the railing of the yacht. She narrowed her eyes and saw Horace's expression change. He immediately suppressed the fear in his eyes. However, Yunjian didn't say anything. The yacht has been changed to an automatic mode. We have stored enough rations to last us for a month. Now, we should plan our route to Death Island. Calvin, who had been sitting in the control room all this while, walked out at this moment and came to the front of everyone. Mr. Horace, I'll have to trouble you to recall the situation on Death Island. Then, we can make a plan. Calvin was very clear. He stood in front of Horace and spoke to him in a very sincere tone. Horace was silent for 2 seconds. 2 seconds later, Horace placed his hand on his forehead and frowned. The next second, Horace pinched his forehead with one hand and shook his head slightly. Only then did he raise his head and say to everyone, "What's the matter? The Island of Death is just like its name. Anyone who enters the island will definitely die. Back then, we weren't the only ones who mistakenly entered the Death Island. I was the only one who left the Death Island alive. The Island of Death was just like its name. Anyone who entered the island would die without a doubt. Finding this sky blue necklace was not the only way to get to Death Island. However, with this sky blue necklace, no matter which direction you go, this sky blue necklace will lead you to Death Island. If someone who didn't want to go to Death Island got this sky blue necklace, it would be the same as being sent to the road of death. Just like the old pirate Horace and his friends 20 years ago, they accidentally entered Death Island. So what exactly is in that Death Island? Why did your friends die there? Calvin asked the main point. When this was mentioned, Horace paused for a moment. Then, in front of everyone, he spoke with a terrified expression. There is a huge man-eating monster on Death Island. That monster is 10 times bigger than a tiger or lion. Whenever the people who live on Death Island catch someone alive, they will feed that person to the monster in front of everyone. Then, the monster will swallow that person alive. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2284. Page 1/1. In short, the people who lived on Death Island were also humans from Earth. However, they were bloodthirsty and murderous. They never treated living outsiders as humans. Whenever they caught a living person, they would tie them up and bring them directly to the big monster, which was far larger than any ordinary creature on Earth. They would let the big monster swallow the living person alive. Some people were even grabbed by the giant monster and had their heads bitten off in one bite, their bodies, hands, and feet bitten off in the other. The miserable state of his death was something that no one could accept. Hearing Horace's words, everyone present felt their scalps go numb, and their hearts trembled. Then, your friends are. Even Calvin, who had always been calm and collected, couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat when he heard Horace's words. That's right. When we first arrived at Death Island, we were caught by the group of humans who lived there. It was only later that we found out that they were feeding the monster with live humans. My friends were all bitten to death by that big monster on the spot. That big monster ate my friends and spat out their bones in front of everyone, Horace interrupted Calvin. At this moment, Horace's fists were clenched tightly, and he was so scared that he couldn't move. His mind was replaying the scene that made him tremble with fear. This world, there's actually such a monster. What kind of god is it? When the younger Felix heard Horace's words, his body trembled violently, and his face turned pale. Horace was silent for a long time. It was as if he was trying to adjust his state of mind. After a while, Horace finally adjusted his state of mind. He heaved a sigh of relief, and then gently wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead, and said to Felix, I don't know what kind of god that monster is, but when I first saw it, I was really scared out of my wits. That monster was 10 meters tall, and as tall as a 3-story building. Its body was extremely sturdy, and it was bound by the group of people on Death Island. After I left Death Island, I went through all the information about the species on Earth, but all the species on Earth were completely different from that big monster. It was just like the hell in the legends. Everything on the island has transcended nature and the world. Horace's words reverberated throughout the hall, causing everyone to tense up once again. I'm a little scared. Ella tugged at the leather jacket on her upper body and shrunk back in fear. Don't panic. Before we came here, I asked someone to get us some weapons, guns, ammunition, and the like. Everyone should carry some with them before we set foot on the island. Even if something really happens, we can still protect ourselves. Calvin said as he patted Ella's back. Hearing that Calvin was armed, Ella heaved a huge sigh of relief. The big monster you mentioned, is it that it has a head like a bull's horn, a body like a tiger's, and hooves like a horse's, but is more than 10 times larger than all the creatures on Earth? Just when everyone was in a state of panic, Yun Jian, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said this. After she finished speaking, everyone turned to look at Horace. Horace's eyes widened abruptly when he heard what Yun Jian said. He looked at Yun Jian in shock and exclaimed in front of Calvin, Ella, and everyone else's horrified gazes, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. How did you know? Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2285. After hearing Horace's words, everyone stared at Yun Jian in shock. They wanted to get an answer from Yun Jian. How did Yun Jian know what the monster on Death Island looked like? She had never been to Death Island. How did she know what the monster on Death Island looked like? Horace himself was staring at Yun Jian in shock and fear. It was as if he wanted to stare a hole into Yun Jian's body. How did she know what that monster looked like? Under everyone's gaze, Yun Jian's lips curled up. She smiled coldly and said, "I guessed. You guessed it so accurately." Fei Lei glared at him and took the lead to speak. After Fei Lei said that, Yun Jian didn't say anything else. Everyone could only let it go. Seeing Yun Jian like that, she definitely wouldn't want to say anything else. At that moment, Yun Jian was still sitting on the deck of the yacht. She placed one hand lazily on her lap and narrowed her eyes. Her thoughts drifted far away. According to Horace's words, Yun Jian could roughly guess the identity of the monster. The monster must be a demonic beast from the myriad continents. As for why it was on Death Island and why the group of people fed it with living humans, it was still a mystery to Yun Jian. After sailing for about 5 hours, the surroundings didn't change. After the sun set, everyone slept in a few rooms on the yacht at night. One person stayed up to keep watch. Until 4 o'clock in the morning of the second day, Yun Jian was woken up by an excited voice. "Look! Quick, look!" After hearing the voice, Yun Jian rolled over and got out of bed. As soon as she walked out of the room on the yacht, she saw a thick fog pervading the surroundings. It was like a fairyland and was very beautiful. Legend had it that Death Island would only appear on the surface of the Indian Ocean at dawn. Thick fog pervaded the surroundings. It was so beautiful that it attracted passing ships to dock at the shore of Death Island. However, the more beautiful something was, the more dangerous it was. That faintly discernible island is the Death Island. "Everyone, get ready," Horace said in a trembling voice. Horace paused for a moment before continuing, "As soon as we enter the Death Island, the humans on the Death Island will appear and capture us. We must remain vigilant at all times." Horace's words made everyone on the yacht turn around and grab all kinds of weapons. They held them in their hands and maintained their vigilance. Until the ship docked at the shore, everyone then carefully disembarked from the ship, trying not to disturb the group of humans who would feed living humans to huge monsters. Horace, Calvin, and the others were extremely cautious, as if they were afraid of disturbing the monsters on Death Island. However, just as Horace, Calvin, and the others were being extremely cautious, Yun Jian jumped off the boat and walked towards Death Island in an extremely lazy manner. She didn't seem to be afraid at all. What was more surprising was that Yun Jian purposely made heavy footsteps with every step she took. It was as if she was afraid of being discovered by the terrifying group of humans on Death Island. "Yun Jian, be careful. We will be discovered." Even Calvin couldn't help but sweat when he saw that. His expression froze. Who knew that Yun Jian, who was standing in front, narrowed her eyes and a strange light flashed across her eyes. She said indifferently, "It's too late. We have already been targeted. Please remember the domain name of this book." Mobile reading website. Chapter 2286. Page 1/1. Horace was the first to be taken aback by Yun Jian's words. Calvin, Ella, and Fei Lei were next. After being stunned for a moment, everyone's slightly trembling faces instantly turned as pale as a sheet of paper. "We were discovered so quickly?" Fei Lei was shocked. His eyes were wide open, and his mouth was so wide that his chin could touch his shoulders. He shouted in horror. Although the people around him were afraid, they didn't show it on their faces like Fei Lei, who was trembling with fear. Yun Jian, who stood in front, narrowed her eyes. "Put down your weapons and let them catch you." When Horace, Calvin, and the others clenched their weapons tightly and saw the group of humans walking towards them from all directions of Death Island, they were so scared that their scalps turned numb and their palms started to ooze cold sweat. Yun Jian's calm and short voice sounded. Only Horace, Calvin, and the rest could hear it. Hearing this, Fei Lei, who was standing behind Calvin, narrowed his eyes and whispered to Yun Jian, "You're crazy. That group of people. After the group of people captured them, they would do what they did to Horace's friends." They would bring them to the monster and then let the monster eat them on the spot. But Yun Jian actually asked them to put down their weapons. Were they tired of living? However, before Fei Lei could finish his words, Calvin's deep male voice sounded, "Listen to her." Calvin was the leader of the group, and even Fei Lei had to listen to him. Therefore, after hearing Calvin's words, Fei Lei put down his gun despite his fear. At that moment, the group of people from Death Island was already standing in front of Yun Jian's group. This group of people was no different from the humans on Earth, and they weren't the barbarians on Death Island. They also spoke English, which was commonly used on Earth. Yun Jian and the others did not resist. The group of people tied up Yun Jian and the others and brought them to the place where the monster was tied up. This was an open field beside a hillside. After Yun Jian and the rest were brought here, they saw a huge monster entrenched in the ground not far away. Perhaps it could be said that this was a gigantic magical beast. That fiend beast was 3 stories tall, with a head like a bull's horn, a body like a tiger, and feet like a horse's hooves. It was dozens of times larger than the creatures on Earth. Without a doubt, it was a magical beast from the myriad continents. At the same time, the gigantic magical beast's limbs were bound by thick and large chains, restricting its range of movement. What made Yun Jian puzzled was, why would this magical beast from the myriad continents be controlled by this group of humans? Just as Yun Jian narrowed her eyes at the scene before her, the leader of the group of people who had tied up Yun Jian and the others suddenly pointed at Yun Jian and Ayla and ordered his subordinates, "Make more breakfast for Fiend Beast. Give Lord Magic Beast some more breakfast, just those 2 girls." The leader of this group of people who lived on Death Island was called Berkey. Below Bogey's cheeks was a very thick beard that almost covered his entire face, making it impossible for outsiders to see Bogey's appearance. Only a pair of deep, dark eyes could be seen. Even Berkey's age was unknown to everyone present. At this moment, Ayla, who was called out, instantly turned pale with fright. "What? Me?" Ayla glanced at the magical beast in the distance. In the distance, the demonic beast was using its claws to grab a person who was struggling in fear. Just like that, the demonic beast sent the person into its huge mouth and swallowed the person who was crying and begging for mercy. The person was so scared that blood was flowing out of his body. Not long after, the magical beast's mouth began to bleed. After chewing for a minute, the magical beast swallowed a pile of bones in front of everyone. A living person was gone just like that. Ayla almost fainted at the sight of this scene. Calvin, Felix, and the others were so frightened that their faces turned pale and their lips trembled. The calmness that they had previously retained was now completely out of control. No wonder after leaving Death Island, Horace would rather pretend to be dead than return to Death Island. Every time the matter of Death Island was mentioned, it was as if he had recalled something terrifying. Because back then, Horace watched helplessly as his friend was sent into the mouth of that gigantic magical beast. That feeling of helplessness was simply unimaginable to outsiders. No. No, no, no. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Ayla was so frightened that she struggled to escape. I want to go home. I don't want to stay in this damned place. I want to go home. But it was useless no matter how much she cried. Soon, someone came over to suppress Yun Jian and Ayla and walked towards the magical beast. Only after pushing Yun Jian and Ayla towards the magical beast did Berkey's subordinates quickly retreat. At this moment, the magical beast had already habitually scooped up Yun Jian and Ayla with both hands and was about to send them into its huge mouth. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2287. Page 1/1, No. Ayla. Ayla. That Yun Jian told us to put down our weapons, shouldn't she have a way? Is she trying to kill us on purpose? We didn't mistreat her along the way. How could she do this? Ayla. No, no. Looking at the fiend scooping up Yunjian and Ai La and feeding them to its mouth, Fei Lei's eyes widened at the thought of the innocent person being devoured just like that. He let out a final cry of despair. Even Calvin, who had always been calm, seemed to have lost his composure at this moment. He was stunned by the sudden turn of events, and couldn't return to his senses for a long time. At this moment, Calvin, Felix and the rest finally understood Horace's heart that was on the verge of collapse. Seeing their little companions being sent into the mouth of a huge magical beast, and in the next moment, becoming a pile of bones like that innocent person, everyone was really panicking. The leader of this group of people who specialized in capturing people to feed the magical beast, Boji, was used to such scenes. He stood in place, listening to his subordinates beside him exclaim in surprise. "Boss, once the Lord Magical Beast eats these two women, it will have eaten 10,000 people. Once the Lord Magical Beast has eaten 10,000 people, it will listen to your orders. At that time, let the Lord Magical Beast open the passage to the myriad continents. You can borrow the Lord Magical Beast's hand to become the ruler of the myriad continents." That's right, Boji and his subordinates were stationed at Death Island to capture people alive and offer them to the magical beast to eat. And Boji and the rest were just ordinary humans. 25 years ago, Boji and the rest were just a group of pirates drifting in the Indian Ocean. Then one day, they accidentally entered Death Island, and from there, they accidentally entered another world. That world was one of the myriad continents. Later on, Boji and the rest were forced to leave the myriad continents, but everything in the myriad continents fascinated them. The lifespan of an immortal cultivator could actually live for thousands of years. Tens of thousands of years. At a certain level, they could even live forever. In addition, everything in the myriad continents attracted him. Therefore, Baki was fascinated and wanted to take over the myriad continents. But in the end, Boji and the others were chased out of the myriad continents. However, before leaving the myriad continents, a black-robed man appeared. That person gave Bogi a small magic beast and said that he wanted Bogi to feed it with living people. When he fed 10,000 people, the magic beast would listen to him. Even if he wanted thousands of continents, this magical beast would be able to obtain them for him. Boji was tempted. After returning to Death Island, he immediately took action. That was what led to everything that happened later. And this little magical beast grew bigger and bigger, turning into its current terrifying appearance. Now, as he watched the magical beast devour 10,000 people, with only 2 people left to complete the task, all the cells in Bogi's body were trembling violently and boiling. On the other side, Yun Jian and Ai La were caught in the fiend's hand and sent to its mouth. Then, in front of everyone, the magical beast sent Yun Jian and Ella into its mouth. No! Calvin, Felix, and the others let out a final cry of despair. At this moment, Yun Jian and Ella had already been swallowed by the magical beast. Everything was over. Baki laughed wildly. He seemed to have seen himself becoming the ruler of the myriad continents. As he laughed, Baki suddenly stopped laughing. His smile instantly froze. What did he see? That magical beast had just swallowed Yun Jian and Ella, and had not even chewed. With a "cheat" sound, the huge magical beast, starting from the top, seemed to have been sliced open by a huge sharp sword. Its body instantly split into 2 halves. This huge magical beast was instantly killed. And at that moment, the moment the magical beast's head split open, a girl in a black shirt and black pants used her mind power to grab another girl who had fainted from fright. Just like that, from where the magical beast's mouth had been, she gently landed on the ground in front of everyone from a height of more than 10 meters. The huge magical beast's body split into 2 halves and fell behind her just like that. At this moment, everyone present felt as if they had seen the god of slaughter from hell. But they saw that the girl with a cold expression was now smiling coldly. She suddenly spoke to Bogi and the others in front of everyone, but what she said shocked them so much that they forgot to breathe. A mere lowly magical beast, how dare you be so arrogant in front of me? Go to hell. Top reading website, M. Chapter 2288. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. At this moment, Ella was being held by Yunjian's spiritual power. Therefore, when she fell from a height of more than 10 meters, she did not fall straight down. Instead, she was gently sent to the ground. But at this moment, Ella had already fainted from the shock of the scene just now. She thought that she was already dead. After all, in the scene just now, Ella and Yunjian were directly sent into the demonic beast's mouth. As long as the demonic beast chewed, it could bite off Yunjian and Ella, just like how it swallowed the innocent person just now. It swallowed Yunjian and Ella into its stomach. If a normal person could survive this, it was simply unrealistic. Therefore, when the demonic beast swallowed Yunjian and Ella, everyone present thought that Yunjian and Ella were already dead. Calvin, Felix, and the others were so desperate that their faces turned pale. The moment Yunjian and Ella were swallowed, Calvin, Felix, and the others had already closed their eyes, not daring to watch the scene in front of them. But what they did not expect was that, the moment Yunjian and Ella were swallowed by the demonic beast, starting from the top of the demonic beast's head, the demonic beast's entire body was instantly torn into two halves as if it was pierced through by a huge sharp sword. Yunjian and Ella also successfully escaped from danger. However, the most shocking thing was not this. But, when Yunjian landed, she actually used her spiritual power to grab the unconscious Ella in the air. This means that the demonic beast's death was also caused by Yunjian. Who exactly is this Yunjian? She actually has the ability to tear the demonic beast's body into two halves after being swallowed. Calvin, Felix, and the others who saw this scene widened their eyes in horror. Horace, who thought that Yunjian and Ella were doomed, also looked at the scene in front of him in horror, unable to recover for a long time. Boki, who felt that he was about to succeed and that he was about to make that huge magical beast listen to his orders and lead him to the myriad continents, widened his eyes fiercely when he saw this scene. In that second, Bogi's expression changed drastically. He looked at the scene in front of him in horror. His face instantly paled as if he had seen something that was shocking and impossible. Could it be that you are from the myriad continent? But that was impossible. This was impossible. This was impossible. That person said that even if it's the people of the myriad continent, there's absolutely no one who can kill this magical beast. Who are you? Bogi's face suddenly paled, as if he had seen something unbelievable. He stared at Yunjian in shock and fear, all the cells in his body trembling and boiling. That person was naturally the black-robed man who had raised Bogi's little magical beast. This is impossible. Could it be that you're from God's continent? But if the people of the God's continent want to leave, it's not that easy. There are no more than 10 deities in this world who can open a passage to leave the God's continent. Among the myriad continents, other than the legendary sorcerer God, who fell 1,000 years ago, no one else has the ability to kill my magical beast. Speak. Who are you? Bogi's face was distorted. He stared fiercely at Yunjian, as if he wanted to stare a hole into Yunjian's body. Horace, Calvin, Felix, and the others were confused. They had no idea what Bogi was talking about. But Horace and the others could tell that the sorcerer god of the myriad continents that Bogi was talking about was definitely an important figure who could shake the other world he was talking about. However, right after Bogi finished speaking, Yunjian stood in front of Bogi again in front of everyone present. Then, with a cold, emotionless voice, she spoke in front of Horace, Calvin, and the others, as well as Bogi and the group of subordinates behind Bogi, with a red arc and a cold, bone-chilling smile on her face. I'm sorry, but I'm the sorcerer god, the daughter of the sorcerer tribe of the sorcerer tribe, the #1 family in the Yulong continent that fell 1,000 years ago. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2289. Page 1/1. She was the daughter of the sorcerer clan from the sorcerer clan, the sorcerer goddess, who had once been famous throughout the 1,000 continents. Hearing Yun Jian's words, everyone present was stunned. Boji, on the other hand, had obviously heard about the legend of the sorcerer goddess in great detail when he accidentally went to the 1,000 continents 25 years ago. 25 years ago, the sorcerer goddess had yet to return, and Boji's memories had stopped at the time before the sorcerer goddess's return. That was why Boji had said, apart from the legendary sorcerer goddess who had fallen 1,000 years ago. However, Boji had never imagined that this extremely ordinary young girl was the daughter of the sorcerer clan from the sorcerer clan of the Yulong continent, the legendary sorcerer goddess who had fallen. Boji panicked. Recalling Yun Jian's previous actions, he had a moment of panic. This young girl should really be the daughter of the sorcerer clan from the Yulong continent. Why are you here? Boji suddenly changed his tone. He bent down and spoke to Yun Jian in a manner that eunuchs used to belittle themselves in front of the emperor. The previously aggressive Boji had actually changed his attitude towards Yun Jian. Horace, Calvin, Felic, and the others were shocked when they saw this. That magical beast, where did you get it? Yun Jian ignored Boji's words and asked calmly. Burja's eyes darted around when he heard what Yun Jian said and quickly told her everything he knew. When I went to the Myriad continent, a man in a black robe gave it to me. That man said that as long as I fed the little magical beast he gave me to 10,000 people, that magical beast would listen to me and bring me back to the Myriad continent. Then I would be able to live on the 1,000 continents forever. Boji still had some reservations. Conquering the 1,000 continents was what Boji wanted. However, he could not say that to outsiders. Hearing Boji's information about the man in the black robe, Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Where is that person? This was the reason why Yun Jian came to Death Island. Yun Jian didn't come to Death Island to have fun. She came here to find information about the mysterious man. He had learned from Jian Ning's adoptive father that there was a place on the Death Island that led to the residence of the mysterious man. It was also because of this that Yun Jian came here. I don't know the details, but I remember that 25 years ago, when I was in the Myriad continent, I secretly followed him after he left. I saw him walk into a place. As long as you promise not to kill me, I will bring you to that place. Maybe we can find it. What Boji feared the most now was being killed by Yun Jian. He wasn't stupid. Among the group of people who had come with Yun Jian, Horace's appearance had been recognized by Boji at first glance. Horace was the only one who had accidentally let him slip away and escaped from Death Island. Since Horace dared to come back, it must be for revenge. I won't kill you. Bring me there. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and said after a flash of light flashed in her eyes. After hearing Yun Jian's words, Horace did not scold Yun Jian for not keeping her promise to avenge him. The group each had their own thoughts. Before heading to the 1,000 continents, which might be the residence of the mysterious man according to Boji, they all stayed on the Death Island. Because Boji was afraid of Yun Jian, he took out the best ingredients on the Death Island to entertain Yun Jian and the others. Yun Jian planned to wait for CE on the Death Island before heading to the 1,000 continents, where the mysterious man lived according to Boji. Top reading website, M. Chapter 2290. At this moment, on the God's continent. Bailey family. The Divine Lord's mother, Bailey Yen, rubbed her eyes. Just as she was about to turn over and sit up, she suddenly felt something. She felt that there was someone sleeping next to her. That fleshy feeling was very obvious. There was a living person sleeping next to her. At this moment, Bailey Yen was wearing pajamas, and her smooth and beautiful thighs were exposed. She was lying on her side on the bed, and her beautiful curves were so enchanting and charming that people couldn't take their eyes off her. As it turned out, Bailey Yen was very beautiful. When Bailey Yen woke up and saw the handsome face of the Lord God sleeping next to her, she seemed to be frightened by something. She rolled off the bed and half-dragged the quilt with her as she glared at the Lord God with a covetous expression. "Why are you here?" The Divine Lord propped himself up. The Divine Lord was no longer an old man. At this moment, the Divine Lord was very handsome. He was 80% similar to CE. However, in terms of appearance, the Divine Lord was slightly inferior to CE. Of course, he was only slightly inferior. The Divine Lord in his youthful appearance was still extremely handsome. Bailey Yen looked at his handsome face and blushed slightly. However, she still covered herself with the quilt and pointed at the door as she shouted at the Divine Lord. "Get out! You get out! Your injuries are already healed. Hurry up and go back to your temple. Don't let me see you again in the future. We agreed that we would never contact each other again. After all, they were once husband and wife." Even if the Divine Lord had done something very excessive to her in the past, Bailey Yen still let the Divine Lord recuperate in her Bailey family for a long time. This injury was left behind when Yunjian and Ce fought with the mysterious person before entering the God Spring. Unexpectedly, the Divine Lord's handsome smile curved. He bent down and leaned in front of Bailey Yen. He reached out and pinched Bailey Yen's chin, wanting to kiss her. Bailey Yen wanted to hide, but in the end, she did not try her best to escape. After all, she still had feelings for the Lord God. Bailey Yen was gagged by the Lord God. After the kiss, the Lord God looked at Bailey Yen sincerely and sighed. Then, he said, "Yen, forgive me. Look, our child is already so big. We even have a child. Why are you still quarreling? Do it with me again, okay?" As he spoke, the Master God stretched out his hand towards Bailey Yen's lapel. "No, I won't forgive you." Bailey Yen glared at the Lord God. However, her mouth was gagged in the end. For some unknown reason, Bailey Yen was once again carried onto the bed by the main god. The reason why Bailey Yen hated the over-god so much was because Bailey Yen felt that she was the one who had been forced to do so from the very beginning. Tens of thousands of years ago, Bailey Yen was the most beautiful young lady on God's continent. At that time, the Master God was already the ruler of the God's continent. Once, after Bailey Yen accompanied her father to attend a gathering in the temple, the Lord God took a fancy to her. Secretly, the Lord God confessed to her, but Bailey Yen rejected him. Later on, the Bailey family's patriarch turned 10,000 years old. Hence, they held a gathering. The Lord God gave the Bailey family a lot of face and personally went to the Bailey family to congratulate them. Due to the Lord God's noble status and the fact that he had confessed to her, Bailey Yen was afraid that he would force her to marry him. Hence, she was afraid that she would run into the Lord God. Everyone in the Bailey family was in the Bailey family's main hall. Bailey Yen ran to the Bailey family's backyard alone. However, she had only taken a few steps when she ran into the Lord God. "Are you running away from me?" The Lord God grabbed Bailey Yen's hand and pressed her into a small stone cave in a rockery in the backyard. When she saw the Lord God suddenly appear, Bailey Yen was so frightened that she turned her face to the side. "No, no, do you hate seeing me that much?" When the Lord God saw how Bailey Yen was running away from him, fury welled up in his heart. In the next second, he pressed Bailey Yen against the rockery and pressed her body down. He lifted her beautiful legs and did something that Bailey Yen would never forgive him for thousands of years. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2291. The Master God had always been instilled with a strong ideal by his father. If you want something and can't get it, then forcefully take it. The Master God had never cared about women. However, all of this changed after he met Bailey Yen. He wanted her. Who knew that after Bailey Yen knew his feelings for her, she would avoid him again and again. Before the Bailey family's master's 10,000th birthday celebration, Bailey Yen had avoided the master god more than once. As the saying goes, things should not be done more than 3 times. After the master god confessed to her, Bailey Yen had avoided him at least 10 times. This time, the master god was furious. Moreover, the master god was the supreme god of the gods' continent. His father had instilled in him a philosophy since he was young. If you want something and can't get it, then just take it. Therefore, on this quiet night with charming moonlight, on the rockery in the Bailey family's back garden, the master god forcefully took Bailey Yen. The Bailey family's master was drinking and making merry in the Bailey family's hall. It was only until he got to know all the gods who came to celebrate his 10,000th birthday that he realized that his most beloved daughter, Bailey Yen, was missing. Have you found her? The Bailey family's master saw his subordinates walking over. He frowned and asked anxiously. At this moment, the banquet had reached its end. The subordinates of the Bailey family shook their heads when they heard the Bailey family's master's words. Your subordinates searched the surroundings but couldn't find the young lady. Why is this Yen Yen so disobedient? She ran out to play on such an important occasion. The Bailey family's master said with a hint of anger after hearing his subordinates' words. However, if one was familiar with the Bailey family's patriarch, they would be able to tell that even though the Bailey family's patriarch's tone was filled with dissatisfaction, his words were filled with endless doting towards his daughter, Bailey Yen. The Bailey family's master loved his youngest daughter Bailey Yen the most. Everyone in the gods' continent knew this. Although the Bailey family was not one of the top 10 heaven-defying families in the gods' continent, the Bailey family was a special case in the gods' continent. Although the Bailey family was not ranked in the top 10 heaven-defying families, the Bailey family's power was equivalent to the top 3 of the top 10 heaven-defying families. During this banquet, there were many people who came to the Bailey clan to congratulate the Bailey clan leader. Therefore, after clan head Bailey finished his angry words, a middle-aged man with the same appearance as clan head Bailey walked over and replied. Patriarch Bailey, your daughter, Bailey Yen, is not only beautiful, but also extremely intelligent. Therefore, you don't have to worry about your daughter in this regard. The little girl has grown up. It's normal that she doesn't like this kind of occasion. Patriarch Bailey, don't treat your daughter like a child. Also, I saw your daughter leave just now. Lord Overgod also walked in the same direction as your daughter. I'm sure Lord Overgod doesn't like such a lively place. Since the Lord Overlord is going in the same direction as your daughter, then even if your daughter encounters any trouble, the Lord Overlord will be there to support her. You don't have to worry about it. This person was obviously here to curry favor with Patriarch Bailey. However, when he heard this person say that he saw the Lord Overlord and his daughter leaving in the same direction, Patriarch Bailey really relaxed and heaved a sigh of relief. The Lord Overlord was the ruler of the gods' continent. He would protect every god on the gods' continent. Therefore, when he heard that the Lord Overlord was going in the same direction as his daughter, Patriarch Bailey also relaxed. Even if something happened to Bailey Yen, as the ruler of the gods' continent, the Lord Overlord would definitely not just stand by and watch. Therefore, Patriarch Bailey continued to entertain his guests. At this moment, he would never have dreamed that the Lord Overlord, whom he thought would protect his daughter even if something happened, was the source of the mishap of his beloved daughter. Bailey clan, back garden, rockery. The Lord Overlord pressed Bailey Yen here and took her by force. The surroundings quieted down. A certain part of her body felt as if it had been ruthlessly torn apart. At this moment, everything was finally quiet. A line of tears flowed from the corner of Bailey Yen's eyes. She waited for the Lord Overlord to leave her body. Then, her entire body slid to the ground like a puppet. The Lord Overlord did not let Bailey Yen slide to the ground. He hugged Bailey Yen and said solemnly to Bailey Yen, I'll propose marriage to your father tomorrow and marry you immediately. He was not the kind of person who only wanted Bailey Yan's body. He liked her. That was why he did such a thing. The Lord Overlord did not know that pursuing the girl he liked had to be done slowly. The philosophy instilled in his bones by his father was that if he wanted to obtain, he had to forcefully possess her. Bailey Yan was in the Lord Overlord's embrace. She struggled angrily out of the Lord Overlord's embrace. Then, she reached out and slapped the Lord Overlord's handsome face. She grabbed half of her body that was covered by her clothes and said angrily to the Lord Overlord, "I won't marry you. I won't forgive you even if I die. You beast." Bailey Yan's slap stunned the Lord Overlord. Obviously, since the Lord Overlord was born, no one dared to treat him like this. However, Bailey Yan's slap did not anger the Lord Overlord. In the end, Bailey Yan covered half of her body with her clothes and ran away. 2 months later. Since then, the Lord Overlord had not appeared in front of her for 2 months. Bailey Yan did not dare to tell her father about that matter. Therefore, she acted as if nothing had happened. However, Bailey Yan was clearly unhappy these few days. She was still brooding over the fact that her virginity had been taken away. At the dining table, the Bailey family's head saw that Bailey Yan's complexion was not good. He asked, "Yan Yan, did you eat something bad recently? Why do you look so pale?" Bailey Yan shook her head. "Father, I'm fine." "That's right. Our Yan Yan is fine. What do you mean by pale complexion? Come, Yan Yan, eat some meat," Bailey Yan's mother said. She picked up a piece of meat for Bailey Yan and brought it to her mouth. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2292. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. When Bailey Yan smelled the piece of braised pork that her mother had passed to her nose, she felt as if her nose had smelled some kind of very stimulating food. That feeling was as if he had smelled some kind of irritating object. This smell passed through her respiratory tract and directly reacted to her stomach. Then, the uncomfortable feeling in her stomach was transmitted to her brain. Therefore, Bailey Yan could not help but turn around and retch. That feeling was as if she could vomit everything that she had just eaten. It was extremely uncomfortable. Bailey Yan only returned to normal after the uncomfortable feeling of vomiting passed. She did not think too much about it. She just turned around and picked up her chopsticks, wanting to continue eating. After picking up her chopsticks, Bailey Yan first pushed back the piece of red braised meat that her mother had given her. Then, she said, "Mother, I don't want to eat meat. Recently, I feel like vomiting whenever I eat meat." Bailey Yan did not feel that she had suddenly become unable to eat meat recently. She just returned the piece of meat in her bowl to her mother who had just given it to her. She still lowered her head slightly and looked unhappy. Bailey Yan was obviously very concerned about her innocence being taken away by the Lord. However, she did not dare to tell her parents about this. Bailey Yan hid all her grief in the bottom of her heart. After saying this, Bailey Yan picked up her chopsticks and continued eating as if nothing had happened. She did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. However, after taking 2 mouthfuls of food, Bailey Yan felt that everyone's eyes seemed to be gathered on her. She raised her head and looked around. She saw that the people sitting around her were all looking at her with a stunned expression. "Father, Mother, what's wrong?" Bailey Yan chewed a mouthful of vegetables and pretended as if nothing had happened just now. She asked her parents a question. Yan. Yan, what's wrong with you? You. Red braised meat is your favorite. Why did you vomit just now? And the way you vomited was the same as when I was pregnant with you, Yan, don't tell me you're having morning sickness. At the end, Bailey Yan's mother widened her eyes. Obviously, even Bailey Yan's mother did not believe this statement. Her daughter was innocent. How could she be pregnant? Without waiting for Patriarch Bailey to express his opinion, Bailey Yan seemed to have suffered a violent blow after hearing her mother's words. She was so frightened that her hand touched the bowl and chopsticks on the table in a panic. In her panic, she accidentally knocked over the bowl and chopsticks. Mother! How could I? Mother, father, brother, sister, I'm not feeling well. I'll go back first. Bailey Yan blinked her eyes as she looked to the side. She found a reason in a panic and found a reason as she fled. Little sister, are you frightened by mother? Mother, don't scare little sister. Little sister is a pure and innocent girl. How could she get pregnant just like that? Bailey Yan's mother when she, Bailey Yan, Bailey Yen, Bailey Wen, Bailey Yen, Bailey Yen Bailey translation how translation That, translation, Bailey, s that translation. Bailey Yen, translation. Bailey that. Hearing this, the matter, everyone. If they did not mention this matter, she would have completely forgotten that she had not had her period for 2 months. Ever since that time, her period had never come again. Could it be that she was really pregnant? The young Bailey Yen was still very tender. She was so scared that she hugged her body and slowly slid to the ground. What should she do? Bailey Yen didn't see it. After she ran into the house in a panic, a tall and handsome man was walking towards her boudoir right after she entered the house. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2293. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. In the past 2 months, the Lord did not appear before Bailey Yen. But that did not mean that the Lord did not secretly visit Bailey Yen. Ever since that day, the Lord felt Bailey Yan's deep hatred for him. That hateful gaze made the Lord's heart clench in pain. At this moment, Bailey Yen was hugging her knees as she slowly slid to the ground. Outside the house, the Lord had already walked to the door of Bailey Yan's room. He raised his hand gently, wanting to push the door open. But in the end, he retracted his hand and turned to leave. That handsome figure gave off an endless feeling of desolation. For the first time in his life, the Lord felt regret. His father taught him that if he took a fancy to something, if he could not get it, he should just take it. Was that right or wrong? Bailey Yen did not know that the Lord had come. She hugged her knees and sat on the cold ground for at least 2 hours. 2 hours later, Bailey Yen walked to her dressing table in a daze. She raised the scissors on the dressing table and pressed it against her belly. She did not want this child. She was still so young, how could she? But the moment Bailey Yen mustered up the courage to stab the scissors, she suddenly thought of her little brother who had just turned 2 years old. He was so cute with his pink little mouth. He would even open and close his mouth and shout at her with unclear words. Jia jia. Jia jia. Smack smack, he was so small and so cute. He could not even call out the word sister clearly and called it jia jia. Would the child in her belly be as cute as her little brother? Bailey Yen fell into a panic. In the end, after some struggle, Bailey Yen decided to abort the child. She did not like the Lord. At least, she did not feel that way now. Moreover, he had forced her. Bailey Yen was a very strong-willed person. She was also very stubborn. The more the Lord forced her, the more she wanted to go against him. She would definitely not give birth to his child. Hence, Bailey Yen began to plan how to abort the child. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months had passed. Bailey Yen felt that her belly was slightly protruding. The God's continent was not like Earth, where one could buy medicine to abort a pregnancy. There was no abortion medicine here. In other words, in the God's continent, once a woman became pregnant, she would give birth to the child under normal circumstances. No woman would think of aborting the child. There was no hospital here to perform an abortion. Bailey Yen was just a little girl in the past. Because she had never come into contact with these things, she thought that it was a very simple thing to abort a child. But she was wrong. In the God's continent, once a woman became pregnant, she would have to give birth to the child. Unless she used a knife to stab the child in her stomach to death. There are some things that you don't understand because you haven't come into contact with them. However, when you encounter trouble and have no choice but to learn about it, you will realize that you are not the only one who has encountered such trouble. There are many people in this world who have encountered the same trouble as you. Take Bailey Yen for example. She heard that there was a mountain in the deity's continent. There was a kind of herb in the mountain that was specially used for abortion. Therefore, Bailey Yen went to the mountain that day. Unfortunately, Bailey Yen couldn't find the herbs even after searching the entire mountain. She sat on the edge of the cliff while clutching her stomach. The thoughts in her heart drifted far away. For a moment, she had the urge to jump down from the cliff or stab the child in her stomach that should not have been born. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2294. Bailey Yan's life was very happy. Her parents and siblings treated her very well. The outside world also knew that Bailey Yen was a very obedient little beauty. Bailey Yen didn't dare to imagine how the outside world would view her if her pregnancy was exposed. Bailey Yen, who had created an obedient image since she was young, couldn't believe it. The feeling of falling into hell after being praised to heaven. Bailey Yen shook her head in panic. Just as she was about to stand up, she didn't know that she stepped on air, and her entire body fell down the cliff. The bottom of this cliff was the God-destroying rock. Even if a god fell down, he would definitely die. Bailey Yen was so scared that her face turned pale. However, the moment she wanted to use her spiritual power to save herself, she suddenly stopped. In the eyes of the world, people who were extremely outstanding since birth could not accept a stain in their lives. Some people would rather die than be accused of indecent behavior one day after they had lived a life of glory. For example, Bailey Yen. Bailey Yen wanted to give up struggling. She might as well fall into this bottomless abyss and fall into the God-destroying rock. If she died, everything would be over. Bailey Yen was a very strong-willed woman. She couldn't accept being raped and still acting as if nothing had happened. Closing her eyes, Bailey Yen was about to fall off the cliff. However, before Bailey Yen could fall off the cliff, a slender hand grabbed her. For a long time, Bailey Yen didn't feel the feeling of falling off a cliff. When she opened her eyes, she saw an angry handsome face staring at her. The owner of this handsome face stared at her for 2 seconds and said angrily, "The God-destroying rock is at the bottom of the cliff. Do you want to die?" The person who came was none other than the Lord. Since the last time he forced Bailey Yen, this was the first time the Lord appeared in front of Bailey Yen. However, for the past 4 months, the Lord went to the Bailey family almost every day to see Bailey Yen. The day also fell. He just didn't dare to appear in front of Bailey Yen. He was afraid that Bailey Yen would be emotional if she saw him. Today, when Bailey Yen left the Bailey family and came to this mountain, the Lord followed behind Bailey Yen. He saw that she seemed to be looking for something, so he followed her all the way. Thinking that the God-destroying rock was at the bottom of this mountain, he wanted to follow her and protect her. However, the Lord never thought that Bailey Yen actually wanted to end her life. She actually dared die. When he thought of how Bailey Yen had closed her eyes and planned to directly fall off the cliff into the God-slaying rock and lose her life, the Master God's heart tightened. He was so scared that his face suddenly turned pale. He tightly grabbed Bailey Yan's hand and roared those words. Seeing the sudden appearance of the Lord God, Bailey Yen was so frightened that she reflexively wanted to take a step back. He even forgot that there was a cliff behind him and that the god-destroying rock was at the bottom of the cliff. Seeing this, the chief god flew into a rage. "You stupid woman, do you want to die so badly? Good. Do you want to die? Since you want to die, you might as well be the woman beneath me. Anyway, it wasn't the first time. Get some benefits for your Bailey clan and serve me well before you die." These words were definitely uttered by the sovereign in a fit of anger. Bailey Yen was frightened by the Master God's appearance. However, before Bailey Yen could react, the Lord God had already grabbed her hand and brought her to the temple in a flash. After bringing Bailey Yen back to the bedroom in the temple, the Lord God threw Bailey Yen onto the bed and quickly stripped off her clothes. However, the moment the Lord God was about to enter Bailey Yen, his gaze fell on Bailey Yen's originally slender, but now slightly arched lower abdomen. Please remember the domain name of this book, .com, Wonderful Book Mobile Version Reading Website, .com. Chapter 2295. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. When the Master God saw Bailey Yen's obviously protruding belly, he stopped his actions of forcing Bailey Yen. Bailey Yen was also stunned. She did not expect that the Lord God would bring her back to the temple and strip her of her clothes to force himself on her. However, Bailey Yen only reacted when she was stripped of her clothes. At this moment, she was not wearing anything. Not only that, it had been 5 months since the Lord God forced himself on her. During these 5 months, Bailey Yen had been hesitating whether she should kill the child in her belly. However, she could not bring herself to do it. After 5 months, her belly grew bigger. Bailey Yen was more and more afraid that her pregnancy would be discovered. Hence, she wore thicker and thicker clothes. Even on hot days, Bailey Yen would wear thick cotton-padded jackets. However, if this continued, she would not be able to hide her protruding belly at 6 or 7 months. Hence, Bailey Yen was anxious. Today, she heard that there was a kind of herb used for abortion in the nearby mountains. Bailey Yen quickly went to pick it. However, she did not expect to meet the Lord God. He even got angry for no reason and brought her to the temple. He wanted to do the same thing to her 5 months ago. Of course, all of this was not the main point. The main point was that she was pregnant. 5 months pregnant, her belly would not be obvious if she wore thick clothes. However, the Lord God had stripped her of all her clothes in a fit of anger just now. In this way, her protruding belly was completely exposed before his eyes. While the Lord God was in a daze, Bailey Yen hurriedly lifted up the corner of the blanket to cover her stomach and her private parts. She glanced to the side and very uncomfortably reached out to pick up the pile of clothes that the Lord God had taken off. However, before she could pick up the pile of clothes that the Lord God had taken off, Bailey Yen's slender wrist was grabbed by the Lord God. At the same time, the Lord God's magnetic male voice suddenly sounded. There was a hint of wild joy in his words. "You're pregnant?" Although the Lord God didn't have any experience, he wasn't stupid. Bailey Yen's protruding belly was different from being fat. That round, ball-like protruding belly was a sign of pregnancy. Seeing the overjoyed look on the Lord God's face, Bailey Yen was so scared that her face suddenly changed. She covered her stomach, lowered her head, and rolled her eyes. She couldn't help but defend herself. "No. I've been eating a lot lately, so I've gotten fatter." "What? Can't I get fat?" Bailey Yen's tone was very unfriendly. After saying this, Bailey Yen pushed the Lord God away. Then, she put on her clothes and ran out of the house. She absolutely could not let him find out that she was pregnant. She would definitely secretly abort the child in her belly. However, before Bailey Yen could run out of the Lord God's bedroom, the Lord God grabbed her wrist and pressed her against the door. Not pregnant? Then why did you go up the mountain? Are you looking for herbs that can remove my child? The Lord God was both surprised and angry. He was angry that she had kept her pregnancy a secret for 5 months and didn't even tell him. He was surprised that he was going to be a father. Bailey Yen, whose thoughts were exposed, stubbornly wanted to pull her hand back from the Lord God's hand. However, she realized that there was nothing she could do. Bailey Yen looked at the Lord God with a hateful gaze, then said angrily, "Yes, yes. Yes, that's right. I'm pregnant, but it's not your child. Why? Do you really think that I can't have you? I found another man to give birth to this child." Ugh. Bailey Yen had just said this when her mouth was blocked. The Lord God angrily blocked Bailey Yen's red lips and kissed her for a while. When he let go of Bailey Yen couldn't even breathe. The Lord God obviously didn't want to let Bailey Yen go. He angrily pushed Bailey Yen to the edge of the bed and pressed down on her. "You found another man after doing it with me? Fine, then I'll personally examine your body and see if you found another man." Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2296. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1, Bailey Yen was eaten by the main god again. However, this time, the main god was careful as if he was afraid of hurting the child in Bailey Yen's womb. Although Bailey Yen did not like how the main god treated her, it was different from the first time. She was indeed moved by the main god's gentle treatment. However, Bailey Yen was a very stubborn person. In Bailey Yen's opinion, he had forced her. Even if the second time really made her feel good, Bailey Yen just couldn't forget what the Lord God had done to her back then. He had raped her. Not long after, Bailey Yen's pregnancy was discovered by the Bailey family. The main god also came to ask for Bailey Yen's hand in marriage. He stood up fearlessly and directly admitted that the child in Bailey Yen's womb was his. He was the one who had forced Bailey Yen to have sex with him. Since then, the Bailey family did not dare to say anything to the main god. After all, the main god was the ruler of the gods' continent at this time. They could only agree to marry Bailey Yen to the main god. After Bailey Yen married the main god, she gave birth to a child. The child was named the Divine Lord. However, ever since Bailey Yen married the main god, she was unhappy. After the child was born, Bailey Yen did not fulfill her duty as a mother. Every time the main god had sex with her, Bailey Yen did not make a fuss. She allowed the main god to do whatever he wanted. She lived like a puppet. In the end, she did not even have any emotions. In the end, the main god had no choice but to let Bailey Yen return to the Bailey family. He would occasionally send someone to bring the Divine Lord to the Bailey family to see his mother. The main god would secretly go to the Bailey family to see Bailey Yen. After that, he never appeared in front of Bailey Yen again. For the next few thousand years, the two of them were stubborn and never met face to face again. Later on, the main god was injured by a mysterious person. The temple was destroyed, and the main god was brought to the Bailey family by Ce. Of course, before that, when the main god let Bailey Yen return to the Bailey family, he changed his appearance to that of an old man in his 50s or 60s. He never changed back. Without Bailey Yen's company, he had already planned to live the rest of his life with the appearance of an old man. However, he didn't expect that after being injured, he would regain his original handsome looks and look 80% like Ce. This memory was something that happened tens of thousands of years ago. At this moment, his soul returned to reality. Now, tens of thousands of years had passed. Bailey Yen, who had been stubborn and arrogant back then, no longer hated the Lord God for forcing her. But Bailey Yen just couldn't bring herself to accept his goodwill. Bailey Yen's waist was about to break after being pulled by the Lord God. She held her waist and neatly buttoned up the clothes on her body. Then, she was about to walk out. Before she could leave, the sovereign pulled her back. Yen, sleep a little longer. Sleep? Sleep on your own if you want to sleep. Get out of the Bailey family for me. After saying that, Bailey Yen flung away the Master God's hand and strode forward to drag the Master God out of bed. However, Bailey Yan's words, which were supposed to be insults, didn't sound like a curse when they came out of her mouth. Her voice was soft and weak, but in the Master God's ears, it sounded like she was acting coquettishly. It was very comfortable. The Master God grabbed Bailey Yan's hand and was about to do something unsuitable for children with Bailey Yan again. The voice of the Bailey family's subordinate came from outside the door. "Miss, the Lord God is here." Hearing this, Bailey Yen pushed the Master God away. "My son is back. Get out of my way, you old fart." Although these words were very fierce, when they came out of Bailey Yan's mouth, it gave people a feeling of tenderness as if she was flirting. "That's my son too." The Master God chuckled and got out of bed. The subordinate who reported the Lord God's arrival waited at the door for a while before seeing Bailey Yen walk out. The subordinate was just about to turn around when he saw the Master God, who looked 80% like CE, walk out of Bailey Yan's room. When he saw the Master God, the subordinate was stunned. The subordinate even rubbed his eyes to make sure that he wasn't seeing things. This person was really the Master God. Everyone on the God's continent knew about the grudge between the Master God and Bailey Yen. But what was going on today? Did the sun rise from the west? The Master God and Bailey Yen walked out of the same room. Did they make up? Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2297. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The subordinate of the Bailey family was dumbfounded and took a long time to react. In the end, the subordinate turned around and chased after Bailey Yen and the overgod towards the main hall of the Bailey family. CE was standing in the middle of the main hall of the Bailey family. Seeing Bailey Yen and the overgod walking over, CE did not waste any time and immediately said to Bailey Yen, "Mother, why are you in such a hurry to get me back? Did something big happen in the deity continent?" Hearing CE's words, Bailey Yan's eyes moved and she shook her head. "Nothing big happened in the deity continent, but something big is about to happen on Earth." "Why do you say that?" CE frowned. "Hey, let me tell you. Are you going to a place called the Death Island?" The overgod snatched the right to speak from Bailey Yen and said to CE. Hearing this, CE's eyes darkened. "Yes. Don't go to that damned place. That place is part of the mysterious person's plan. He wants you and the sorcerer goddess to enter the deity continent from the Death Island and trap you there. You should know that the biggest obstacle for the mysterious person now is you. His next goal is to turn everyone on Earth into his slaves. After trapping you, he will be able to attack Earth without hesitation." The overgod said solemnly. His words did not seem to be a joke. Hearing the overgod's words, CE frowned. "Father, how did you know all of this?" Brat, don't ask me how I know. I just know. Moreover, the mysterious person will not be able to go to Earth for a while. But I know that in the near future, he will forcibly open a passage from the deity continent to Earth in a place called Puluo City in Z country. This way, there will be 3 passages from the deity continent to Earth. However, for the time being, I don't know the exact location of the passageway in Puluo City in the eastern province of Z country. What I do know is that the mysterious man will send his subordinates to Puluo City. So, after you and Sorcerer Goddess return to Z country, you must go there and investigate the location where the mysterious man opened the passage. You should be able to find the real hiding place of the mysterious man. The Master God's words reached CE's ears. Upon hearing this, CE's eyes flashed. In the next moment, he didn't listen to the over-god and turned to leave the Bailey family. "Aya, you stinking brat, wait for me. This old man hasn't finished speaking yet." Seeing this, the master god stood behind Ce and shouted. He wanted to chase after her but was stopped by Bailey Yen. The Lord God's current appearance was only in his early 20s. The way he referred to himself as an old man was truly shocking. "So stop fooling around in front of me, you old geezer. Go back to your temple." Bailey Yen glanced at the Lord God and walked back to her house. Don't. Yen, my temple hasn't been repaired yet, has it? Now the temple has become a ruin. If you don't take me in, I'll have nothing to eat." After saying that, the master god chuckled and shamelessly walked towards Bailey Yen. Death Island. Yunjian had been here for almost 3 days. 3 days had passed and Ce still hadn't come. Everything on Death Island made Yunjian feel that something was wrong, but Yunjian didn't say anything. Horace, Calvin, Ella, Felix, and the others didn't notice anything wrong. They stayed on Death Island in a rather luxurious villa built by Bogey. Bogey and the others were afraid of Yunjian, so they gave their villa to Yunjian, Horace, and the others. That night, at 1:30 a.m. Yunjian's eyes that were closed to rest abruptly opened. In the next second, she got up and went to the other rooms in the villa to wake up Horace, Calvin, and the others. "What's wrong with Yunjian? It's the middle of the night." Calvin and the others couldn't understand. However, after they finished speaking, they saw Yunjian put her hand to her lips and made a soft, shoot sound. Then, she said, "Something's wrong with Death Island. We must leave immediately." Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2298. Something's wrong? What's wrong with him again? It's the middle of the night, Yunjian, don't scare me. I'm scared. After hearing Yunjian's words, Ella suddenly felt a chill run down her spine. She was so scared that her expression changed slightly. "Aren't you doing fine? You're so powerful that even the most powerful person on Death Island, Boki, listens to you. Moreover, he's so scared that he's willing to let us stay in his mansion." Huh. What could possibly happen? Yunjian, don't be so paranoid. You should wash up and go to bed. We've stayed here for 3 days and nothing has happened. Waking us up in the middle of the night to tell us this, it's quite scary. Felix stretched out his hand and yawned as he spoke. While speaking, Felix still had a sleepy look on his face. Felix, who was in his early 20s, was a very lazy young man. Only Calvin and Horace's eyes moved when they heard Yunjian's words. The two of them agreed with Yunjian's words. "Let's leave Death Island immediately." Seeing that Calvin and Horace were no longer calm, Ella, who was also a girl in her early 20s, also became somewhat uneasy. "It should be fine." Ayla comforted herself. Speaking up to this point, Ayla suddenly felt her heart tighten and tremble. Because from the conversation between Yunjian and Boki, although they did not understand what Yunjian and Boki were saying, Calvin, Horace, and the others were not stupid. Naturally, from the conversation between Yunjian and Boki, they could tell that this place called Death Island seemed to lead to another world. If that was the case, then, thinking of this, fear flashed through everyone's eyes. Even their hearts could not help but tremble. While Felix, Ella, and the others were talking, Yunjian had already equipped herself with weapons. She did not explain anything. Instead, she lightly waved her hand and said, "Follow me closely." With that, she led the way out of the mansion. They went round the back of the house, without passing the field of tents where Bogi and the others were camped. Yunjian led Calvin and the others to board the yacht that they came from. After that, the yacht sailed along the sea and quickly returned to where it came from. When they left, they did not disturb Berkey and the others on Death Island. Obviously, if they followed Yunjian, it would be difficult for Calvin and the others to alert anyone. After a whole day of sailing, they finally left Death Island at 8:00 in the evening the next day and returned to the pier in Country S. Seeing the pier that they had come from in Country S, everyone could not help but heave a sigh of relief. However, when he thought about it carefully, he did not notice anything before. Yunjian wanted everyone to leave Death Island with her. What was going on? Thinking of this, Felix said, "Actually, nothing happened." "Yunjian, why do you want us to leave Death Island?" There was no response to Fei Lei's words. After docking the yacht, everyone boarded the pier. Not long after, there was a sound. Not long after, the group of 500 adventurers who were suppressed by Yunjian appeared at the pier. It turned out that they did not leave. The ones leading them were Jia Wei, Eva, and the others. Jia Wei had gathered these 500 adventurers last time. After one of the adventurers was killed by Yunjian, although he was afraid, he was unwilling to see Yunjian and the others board the yacht to Death Island. As a matter of fact, Jia Wei did not leave. He led these 500 adventurers to guard here. When they saw the yacht coming back from afar, they all swarmed over. They would not have known if they did not look. However, when they looked, it was really Yunjian and the others. Therefore, when they saw Yunjian and the others, Jia Wei asked directly, "Did you come back from Death Island?" After that, afraid that Yunjian would kill them like how she killed the adventurer, Jia Wei said, "Don't misunderstand. We are not here to find trouble with you. We just want to know about Death Island." Yunjian ignored Jia Wei and the others' goodwill. Not long after, Yunjian led Calvin and the others to a hotel near the pier in Country S. Jia Wei and the others wanted to know about Yunjian and the others going to Death Island. Therefore, they all stayed in the same hotel as Yunjian and the others or in another hotel. At night, Yunjian, Calvin, and the others were eating at the dining table. She frowned slightly, feeling that something bad was going to happen. Death Island was not that simple. However, just as Yunjian was thinking about it, she habitually picked up a chicken drumstick and stuffed it into her mouth. Yunjian suddenly felt nauseous. She spat out the chicken drumstick and turned her head to the side to retch. Please remember the domain name of this book, .com, Wonderful Book Mobile Version Website, .com. Chapter 2299. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1, Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Yunjian leaned to the side and retched twice before pressing her throbbing head. Yunjian, what's wrong with you? Seeing Yunjian suddenly retching, Calvin hurriedly asked Yunjian in a caring tone. I must have eaten something bad, it's nothing. Yunjian turned around and lightly pursed her red lips before replying. Yunjian did not think about this at this moment, her thoughts drifted far away. On the island of death, she felt a very unusual aura. It was the aura of a conspiracy. Although Yunjian did not sense any danger before this, she always trusted her intuition. Hence, she led Calvin and the rest to leave the island of death overnight. However, Yunjian felt that things were not that simple. Then you have to take good care of your body. For us girls, health is the most important thing. Everything else is bullshit. Come, when you're not feeling well, eat more nutritious vegetables. Eat more. After hearing Yunjian's words, Ella took the chopsticks in Yunjian's hand in a friendly manner and used the chopsticks to pick up some simple vegetables on the table and place them into Yunjian's bowl. Vegetables, radishes, cabbage, they were all boiled with a little oil and were cooked very lightly. It was the traditional taste of S country's cuisine. Yunjian did not feel that there was anything wrong with Ella's sudden friendliness. She nodded and ate some bland food. She probably caught a cold. The group had dinner in this restaurant and returned to the hotel. When the group returned to their rooms to sleep, Yunjian stopped them and reminded them in an extremely soft voice, "Don't worry. Don't sleep too deeply tonight. She did not say anything else. Due to Yun Jian's previous ability, Calvin and the rest did not say anything and only nodded in response. Nightfall. The wind was chilly. Night in S country. After all, it was winter and the weather was very cold. Kacha kacha kacha. Yun Jian slept in the room with her eyes closed. She felt that the window had been pried open with tools for half an hour before it was finally opened. Yun Jian had already felt the noise from the moment the window lock was pried open with a tool. The funny thing was that the person outside thought that he hadn't been discovered and took half an hour to open the window. With a kacha sound, the window lock was finally pried open. The window was also opened slightly. A small smoke-hole-like object was stuffed in. Not long after, dense smoke floated out of this small smoke-hole-like thing. Yun Jian could tell that the smoke coming out of the cigarette hole was knockout powder. This kind of knockout drug could make people fall into a deep sleep, at least for a short period of time. This drug was very effective on ordinary people, but it didn't have any effect on her. He had been picking the window lock for half an hour and had even tried to knock her out with this kind of low-level drug. Yun Jian's lips curled up coldly. The next second, she smoothed her lips and closed her eyes, pretending to be asleep. When there was no more noise in the room, the smoke-hole-like object was removed. After the smoke in the room dissipated, 2 people came in through the window. Is she asleep? She must be asleep. The composition of my knockout powder is enough to knock out a cow. Let's not waste any more time. Let's hurry up and find the item. Once we find it, let's leave immediately. 2 sparse voices were heard. These 2 faint voices belonged to a man and a woman. Even if Yun Jian didn't open her eyes, she could tell that the voices belonged to none other than Jia Wei and Eva. Jia Wei and Eva had never been to Death Island. After Yun Jian and the rest returned, they refused to tell them what had happened on Death Island. Hence, they came up with the idea of stealing Yun Jian's sky blue necklace. Found it. It's here. Then let's hurry up and leave. It'll be bad if she wakes up. After searching for about 10 minutes, Jia Wei and Eva finally found the sky blue necklace. The 2 of them happily walked out of the window, intending to leave Yun Jian's room through the window. However, just as the 2 of them were about to walk to the window, 3 throwing knives suddenly flew past Jia Wei and Eva's left, top, and right sides. The 3 throwing knives hit the wall by the window that Jia Wei and Eva were about to leave, piercing straight into the snow-white wall. This sudden change caused Jay and Eva's hearts to tighten. Just as the 2 of them were in a state of panic, the voice of the young girl, who they thought had already fainted, rang out from behind them. Her words actually carried a trace of hair-raising meaning. Since the 2 of you are here, why don't you stay for a while before leaving? Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 2300. Page 1/1. Yun Jian's voice suddenly sounded from behind Jia Wei and Eva. Just now, Jia Wei and Eva were sure that Yun Jian had been drugged, and had searched for 10 minutes before they found the sky blue necklace. From start to finish, Yun Jian did not move at all. That quiet look, if she was not really drugged, how could she be faking it? Hence, Jia Wei and Eva did not suspect that Yun Jian was pretending to be asleep. However, when Jia Wei and Eva took the sky blue necklace and were about to walk out of the window, Yun Jian's voice sounded like a ghost. When the voice sounded, Jia Wei and Eva were shocked, and their faces turned purple. Yun Jian, you were not drugged. Jia Wei turned around, and saw that under the moonlight, Yun Jian had already come out from the bed to stand behind them. She did not make a single sound, and was like a ghost. Jia Wei widened his eyes at the sight and stared at Yun Jian in disbelief for a few seconds, his face draining of color from the shock. Why would I be drugged? At this time, Yun Jian was holding a butterfly knife in her hand. She twirled the butterfly knife in her hand, and the way she twirled it was fast and skillful. There was no light in the house, so Yunjian's face could only be seen clearly through the moonlight that shone into the house from outside. At this moment, Yunjian held the butterfly knife in her hand, and looked like a death god. In this dark night, she was like an emissary from hell, causing Jiawei and Eva to shiver. Yunjian, I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. I just wanted to take this sky blue necklace, that's all. Furthermore, this sky blue necklace is useless to you. You guys have already been to the Death Island, and refuse to tell us what's there. Why can't you give us the necklace and let us go there? When Jia Wei saw Yunjian holding the butterfly knife, he panicked. He then blinked, and gripped the sky blue necklace tightly, as though he would rather die than return it to Yunjian. She's here. Just as Jia Wei was protecting the necklace, and did not intend to return it to Yunjian, Yunjian's indifferent voice sounded. What? When Jia Wei and Eva heard Yunjian's words, they were stunned, and did not understand what Yunjian meant. Yunjian narrowed her eyes, and suddenly charged towards Jia Wei and Eva with the butterfly knife. The room was only so small, Jia Wei and Eva were standing 3 meters away from Yunjian. When they saw Yunjian charging towards them, they saw the butterfly knife in Yunjian's hand, and recalled the scene of Yunjian killing people at the pier. Jia Wei was so frightened that he crouched down, holding his head, and cried out, I was wrong. I was wrong. I'll return the necklace to you. I'll return it to you. But just as Jia Wei was kneeling down and apologizing, and Eva was trembling in fear, Yunjian leaped over Jia Wei and Eva, and jumped out of the window. Before Jia Wei could hold his head, he saw this scene. His eyes moved slightly, and in the next second, his face turned pale with fright. This is the 5th floor. Yunjian jumped out of the room, and that's like jumping 5 floors. Jumping from 5 floors to flat ground, it would be strange if a normal person did not die. Is Yunjian courting death? Jia Wei and Eva were so frightened that they turned to look out the window. Their faces turned pale, and they looked like they could not turn back for a long time. But when they turned to look out the window, they thought they would see Yunjian jump down 5 floors, and even if she did not die, she would be crippled. Jia Wei and Eva's eyes widened, and they forgot to breathe. All the cells in their bodies were frozen by Yunjian's next move. They were so frightened that their jaws dropped to the ground, and their eyes bulged out of their sockets. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2301. Yunjian, who had jumped out of the window, landed at a height of about 15 to 16 meters. Her slender body shone brightly under the moonlight. Her petite body landed on the ground at the speed of light and lightning from a height of almost 5 stories. It was as if an ordinary girl had magic on her, as if she was a character from a legend. After jumping down from the 5th floor, she landed on the ground slowly. This unrealistic scene scared Jane and Eva so much that their faces turned pale. How is this possible? She's not a god. Could it be that Yunjian is a god? Jane and Eva were so shocked that their eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. This did not conform to reality. It completely overturned Jane and Eva's thoughts. Then, right after Yunjian landed on the ground, the snow-white moon in the sky seemed to have been dyed red by blood. The snow-white moon had actually turned into a crimson moon within everyone's sight. What is going on? What is going on? Eva was so scared that she couldn't care less about her image. She grabbed Jane's collar and screamed. Eva's screams attracted Calvin, Horace, Ella, and the others who were staying in the hotel and were warned by Yunjian not to sleep too deeply. After Calvin and the others came out, they ran downstairs and stood next to Yunjian. When they saw the strange crimson moon in the sky, Calvin and the others were shocked. It's not like there's a lunar or solar eclipse today. Why did the moon turn red? Calvin stood next to Yunjian. When he saw this scene, his face darkened. This strange phenomenon horrified Calvin. Yunjian narrowed her eyes and didn't say anything. The next second, her red arc curled up coldly. Just as Yunjian's lips curled into a smirk, an unbridled cackle rang. Ha ha ha. I didn't expect you to see through me and escape from Death Island. But it doesn't matter. Even if this isn't Death Island, Sorcerer God, I can still find you. The next second, a man in a black robe appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Boji, that's Boji. Horace clenched his fist and shouted when he heard the man's voice. Horace would never forget that man's voice for the rest of his life. That man in the black robe was Boji. He was the leader of the group of people on Death Island who killed Horace's good friend 20 years ago. Boji, who was originally terrified of Yunjian, seemed to have turned into a different person. He looked at Yunjian from afar and laughed maniacally as he tore his mask off. Everyone around was stunned. What's going on? Didn't Boji already admit defeat to Yunjian? I've heard of him for a long time. After he betrayed the God's continent 10,000 years ago, he was expelled from the God's continent and was never heard from again. He once killed countless innocent cultivators on the God's continent and was known as the Great Killing Devil. He was ranked in the top 10 on the God's continent's strength list. Now that I've seen you today, you're indeed extraordinary. At this moment, Yunjian's voice suddenly rang out. Her words were directed at Boji. When they heard Yunjian's words, Calvin and the others were stunned. Calvin and the others already knew that there was another continent in this world, but they didn't know what it was like. However, from Yunjian's words, they could tell that, this Boji, in another world, was a big shot who could shock everyone. Although Jiawei and Eva were confused and didn't know what Yunjian was referring to, they could tell that Boji, who had suddenly appeared, was definitely not ordinary. After hearing this, Jiawei and Eva's bodies suddenly trembled. However, just when everyone was shocked by Boji's identity, Boji suddenly sneered at Yunjian in front of everyone. In spite of it, Yunjian's identity revealed by Burge struck fear into everyone's heart, making them forget to breathe. Ha! No matter how famous I am, I have to admit that I'm far inferior to you. As an immortal cultivator from a low-level continent like the Yulong continent, you have the ability to destroy the world. In the battle between the thousands of continents to determine who was the number one continent, you, the sorcerer goddess, were merely a woman, but you suppressed all the continents and massacred countless strong cultivators who refused to admit defeat, pushing the Yulong continent to the throne of the number one continent among the thousands of continents. Sorcerer goddess, I, Boji, would also like to meet someone as powerful as you. Please remember the domain name of this book, mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2302. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. 1,000 years ago, on the countless continents in the universe, there was a huge event that shocked the continents. That was when the strong fighters of the thousands of continents stepped forward to fight for the throne of the first continent. The first continent referred to a continent chosen from the thousands of continents in the universe to be the ruler of the thousands of continents. For example, a country had countless provinces, but only one of them was the capital. The capital was the largest area under the jurisdiction of all the provinces. Similarly, the countless provinces could be compared to the thousands of continents in the universe. The capital, the area under the jurisdiction of all the provinces, was the throne of the first continent. The first continent was the central platform that governed all the continents. In layman's terms, the first continent was the capital of a country. Therefore, back then, the experts of the thousands of continents had all stepped forward, wanting to contribute to their own continents and help them ascend to the throne of the number one continent. However, at that moment, the sorcerer goddess stepped forward. Once the sorcerer goddess stepped forward, she immediately massacred the strong fighters of the thousands of continents who stepped forward to fight for the throne of the first continent. She directly pushed the Yulong continent to the throne of the first continent. If the strong fighters of the thousands of continents dared to disagree, the sorcerer goddess would kill them. During that time, other than the strong fighters of the Yulong continent, the strong fighters of the other continents were all killed by the sorcerer goddess. Those who did not agree, the sorcerer goddess did not hesitate to kill them. She did not have the slightest intention of showing mercy. At that time, this matter shook all the continents and even spread to the ears of the gods continent. Although Calvin, Horace, Ella, Jane, Eva and the rest did not understand the meaning of Boki's words, they could tell from Boki's words how powerful the sorcerer goddess was. Calvin, Horace, Ella, Jane and the rest were completely dumbfounded. And from Boki's words, it seemed like Yunjian was someone from another world. But from the conversation between Yunjian and Boki, since the two of them could speak in a tone of mutual admiration, this meant that they did not have any enmity towards each other, right? At this thought, Calvin, Horace, Ella, Jane and the rest heaved a sigh of relief. But just as everyone was thinking this, Burge suddenly snorted and spoke impudently. "Ha, wizard god, what you should be thinking now is whether I, Boji, have joined the mysterious man's side. Then I'll tell you clearly now. Yes, I, Bogi, am now the mysterious man's subordinate. It was also the mysterious man's arrangement that I waited for your arrival on Death Island. I just didn't expect you to discover my purpose and escape. Humph, but it doesn't matter. Even without the help of the divine monarch, I still have the 100-fold potion that the mysterious man gave me. My strength can be increased by 100 times from my original foundation. This way, even if you are the sorcerer god, the legendary figure of the myriad continent, you will still be no match for me." As he spoke, he took out a bottle of potion and was about to drink it in front of everyone. Seeing this, everyone's heart trembled. Even Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Her power was indeed above Boji's. But if Boki had drunk the 100-fold potion, then she might only be able to fight him to a draw at most. Even if they fought to a draw, she would still be seriously injured. However, just as Yun Jian was about to fight with Boki, a slender palm suddenly appeared on Boki's head. After the hand covered Boki's head, it grabbed. Boki's head, which was still laughing wildly, was instantly crushed on the spot. Blood splattered everywhere. Everyone who saw this scene was stunned on the spot. However, just a second before Boki's head was crushed on the spot, everyone heard a furious voice suddenly ring out. In that magnetic and pleasant male voice, there was a coldness that could not be ignored. "Did you ask for my permission to touch my woman?" Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2303. It was a magnetic, mellow male voice that was so pleasant that it sounded like there was no other male voice in the world. It was accompanied by the sound of chi chi chi. Everyone saw that after the slender hand covered Boji's head, it crushed Boji's head in front of everyone. It was like crushing a mosquito, and the mosquito's blood gushed out. Boji's head instantly turned into a pool of blood like killing a mosquito. His body was still there, but his head instantly exploded into a pool of blood. When this scene happened in front of everyone's eyes, it made everyone's hearts tremble violently. This unforeseen event happened so suddenly that even Boji himself didn't expect that someone would appear behind him. And after this person covered Boji's head with his hand, he crushed Boji's head. The speed of Boji's death was so fast that everyone present couldn't react in time. Everyone's hearts trembled violently. In that instant, everyone present was so shocked that they almost suffocated. The head of a living human being was actually, at that moment, everyone saw a handsome man who was half a head taller than Boji suddenly appear behind Boji. He was wearing black casual clothes. After the handsome man crushed Boji's head in front of everyone present, he kicked away Boji's corpse in front of him and walked towards Yunjian. Everyone at the scene was thoroughly frightened. Oh my God. This is too scary. Who is this person? He actually. Jia Wei and Eva stood on the 5th floor and watched the scene unfold in front of them. When they saw Ce walk towards Yunjian, the two of them were so scared that they didn't know how to describe it. Terrifying was the most appropriate word to describe Ce. Then, they saw Ce walk directly to Yunjian in front of everyone. He grabbed Yunjian's hand and walked out. Everyone present watched as Ce grabbed Yunjian's hand and left. Only Horace called out to Yunjian right before she was taken away, "Yunjian, you're the one who's leaving. Young lady, thank you." Although it wasn't Yunjian who avenged him in the end, this handsome man who suddenly appeared clearly had a close relationship with Yunjian. This handsome man killed Boji for Yunjian. Therefore, Horace watched Yunjian leave with grateful eyes. The war had ended before it even began. Yunjian blinked, taking a long time to come to her senses. When she finally reacted, Ce had already pulled Yunjian onto the bus back to Z country. On the way, Ce repeated what the Lord said to her. After hearing Ce's words, Yunjian already had a plan. Z country's eastern province. She, Yunjian, had to go. She didn't know when the mysterious persons of Yunjian country's location of Yun, but Yunjian had already decided that she would go to Puluo City, disguise herself as an ordinary person, and look for the specific location of the channel. No matter what, as long as there was a glimmer of hope to find the mysterious person, Yunjian would not give up. She would make the mysterious person pay the price. Seeing Yunjian looking at the window outside the bus, Ce's deep eyes flashed. The next second, he put his handsome hand in front of Yunjian. Seeing an egg suddenly appear in his hand, Yunjian held back her breath and suddenly froze. "Where did you get this?" "A little girl gave it to you just now." "Eat it," Ce said. Just now, when Yunjian was absent-minded, a little girl ran to Ce and handed him an egg. Then she ran away. She was a lovely little girl. At this moment, Ce peeled the shell of the egg and handed it to Yunjian. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.